The mission statement of the City District of Albany is that we will work in partnership with our diverse community to engage every learner in a robust educational program designed to provide the knowledge and skills necessary for success. We now invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance if you would like to do so. I pledge allegiance. And of course, I did it backwards, and I'm not going to make you listen to the mission statement again. Superintendent, you are on. Mrs. Adams will now present her report.
Good evening, and Madam President, members of the board. I am so excited that we have entertainment tonight at our board meeting, and so we are going to kick off the report with another rendition from our all-girls jazz band here at Stephen and Harriet Myers Middle School under the direction of Mr. Jesse Rosen.
Excuse me, Superintendent, may I swap this out, please? I didn't like that pop.
Thank you so very much. I would like to take this opportunity to share a reminder about the benefits available to all district employees as well as our students who may not be eligible for free CDTA transportation to and from school. Discounted CDTA bus passes are available to all all City School District of Albany staff members, as well as for students who live closer than 1.5 miles and are not eligible for free CDTA transportation to and from school. District staff members and non-eligible students can receive a 10% discount on standard CDTA rates. To purchase a discounted pass, staff members will need a district pay stub that is less than 1 month old. Parents and guardians of students can pick up a letter from our transportation department that may be used to qualify for a discounted pass. Once you have that documentation, the passes can be purchased at the CDTA Customer Service Center. Please make sure that you are aware of the hours. CDTA Customer Service Center is open from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. Discounted passes are limited to 1 pass per account and can be purchased for up to 3 months. The discount is available as a benefit through the district's transportation partnership with CDTA. Another reminder that applications for this year's pre-kindergarten lottery are available through the end of this month. You may visit albanyschools.org to download an application or pick up one at Central Registration, any of our elementary schools, and at any of our community pre-K partners. Pre-K applications are due by March 2nd, and the lottery will be held March 14th in conjunction with our annual Magnet Elementary School Lottery. At this time, I would like to recognize a few of our Albany High School students for their recent achievements. Juniors Christina Black and Irene Nelson have been selected to represent Albany High School this summer at the 2018 American Legion Auxiliary Empire Girls State Program. Let's give them a round of applause. Girls State is a week-long educational leadership workshop focusing on the traditions, institutions, and ideals of America and our political process. Christina and Irene are both active members of the Albany High Junior ROTC program. They will have the opportunity to network with their peers from across the state and meet with government leaders. Girls State will be held in July at the State University of New York College at Brockport. Our students were selected to attend Girls State by the Joseph E. Zalaga Post 1520. I would like to thank our partners at the American Legion for supporting our students and congratulate our students on this well-deserved opportunity. I would also like to recognize Albany High senior Jaleel Young for his success at this week's Section 2 bowling tournament. Jaleel qualified for next month's state tournament in Syracuse. It is the first time in at least 2 decades, and perhaps even longer, that we're still researching that a bowler from Albany High has reached the state tournament. This is a great achievement for Jaleel, and I wish him well. Albany High's bowling team also had a strong showing at sectionals on Monday. The Falcons finished 5th all around out of 20 teams in Class A. This also was the team's best performance at sectionals in many years. Congratulations to Coach Nancy Madsen and her bowlers for their excellent performance. We also have another congratulatory announcement for Albany's high school girls varsity basketball coach, Decky Lawson. Coach Lawson won his 100th game as Albany High's coach. That makes him just the second girls coach in school history to reach that milestone. He has an impressive 101-25 record in the 6 seasons in leading the Falcons. Let's give him a round of applause. Albany High boys basketball team opens the playoffs at Colony next Wednesday night. Tip-off time will be at 8 p.m. Good luck to all of our student athletes. On February 11th, the City School District of Albany was well represented by 2 recipients of the 22nd Annual Creative Expressions Contest sponsored by the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Albany, New York Alumni Chapter. The event is in celebration of Black History Month. Shafiq Grady, Albany High School 12th grader, won in the Written Expressions category, and Carly Grant, Montessori Magnet School 5th grader, won in the Artistic Expressions category. Winter break is coming up next week, and I would like to remind everyone that all of our schools will be closed for the week. Our offices at Academy Park and at Harriet Gibbons will also be closed on Monday in observance of President's Day, but the offices will reopen on Tuesday and remain open the rest of the week. I hope everyone has a restful and safe vacation, and I would now like to invite Principal Jennifer Shatan to tell us more about the great things that are happening here at Myers Middle School.
I think you can hear me better now. Good evening. So I'm Jennifer Shatan, and I have with me Miss Rose, my assistant principal, as well as Miss House. And I asked them to sit with me this evening because all of the work we do every day would not be possible without them. And so I thought it was important that they join me up here this evening. So the presentation is probably a little bit different than some other schools in that Myers had already done a presentation on sort of the basics. And so tonight we wanted to bring you some updates on the basics, but also a little bit about some of the exciting things that we're doing and some of the work that's in progress and the things we're headed towards. So you can see on the front of our presentation that we have a picture of 2 of our 6th graders, and they have a Kwanzaa wreath there that they designed courtesy of the PTA and that we sold the night of our winter concert. So that was a great success, and the kids designed about 10 wreaths. And I actually that's the wreath actually that I purchased, and so it's still alive actually outside my house. So I still have that. So if you want a wreath next year, you know where to go. And then we have our motto, which is home away from home. And really, the goal for the 3 of us is that we want this to be a place where kids want to come every day and that we want to come every day. So that's what we're working towards. So you know our mission and our vision, and it's certainly to help students feel empowered, and we want to work together, and we want to acknowledge the connections between our community and the cultural diversity, and then really ultimately help students to reach their full potential, but as well as our staff, because they're growing every day, and we're growing every day. So we want to reach our full potential, whatever that may be. And maybe to learn how to work this. Hold on. Maybe not. I broke it, maybe. We could stand there and do it. Whoop. Okay, so we have our demographics, and they've changed a little bit, but not drastically. You'll see we have a pretty large bubble in the 7th grade, which will be a large bubble again in the 8th grade. And so those are some things that we're working on to accommodate how students move and in the class sizes. And then we've received 6 new students since November 1st. So we've stayed pretty stable. We've had some kids leave, but pretty stable. So I chose 2 areas of our SEP plan, and the reason I chose them is they sort of work hand in hand. We've chosen Tenet 2 and Tenet 4 to look at, and really centered around instruction and really our procedures. So as an admin team, our goal obviously is to look at instruction and look at all the pieces that are involved in instruction. And so not only doing our formals, but also looking at our walkthroughs. And one of the biggest goals that we have as a group is to really increase student talk. So we talk to the teachers a lot about when we're coming in and we hear just you, that we want to hear more students. So those are one of the things that we're working on with them. And so with that, we look at Tenet 4, And we're working with our coaches. So with our literacy coach and our math coach, we're working with them to meet with them on a monthly basis to start really developing a professional development plan to focus on those things. And one of the first things we're starting with is the I Can statement, and thinking about what are the connections between that I Can statement, the instruction, and then our planning that the teachers are doing. So we're starting there and making plans moving forward and taking little pieces to make progress and adding to that. And then we have our celebrations. So super excited that we had a sixth grader win the district spelling bee, which is super exciting. And he's very humble about it. Like, I'm in the hallway, I'm like, you won? He's like, yeah, that was it. That's about all I got. So, but he did really well and went to the regional, and he'll continue to do well. And I suspect as an eighth grader, he might win the whole thing. He's a pretty talented kid. And so we'll see. And then we have really exciting that Ms. Rector and Ms. Waldman received a grant for a food pantry. So not only will we have our weekend backpack program, but we'll have a full functional food pantry as well for our kids. And so that's really exciting. And we have a lot of students who the backpack program is good, but some kids have actually asked for additional food because that's not enough. And so this food pantry will help serve that. We have 73 students who have maintained a 95% average or better for the first semester, which is quarter one and quarter two. And so they're actually going to receive a special recognition at our honor roll celebration. And what we've developed is what we call the Falcon List. And so those are those students that consistently maintain that average. And we want to honor that because it's a lot of work to get to that. And then we have a wonderful program that started called the Empire State PAL After School Program. And right now we have just over 50 students in partnership with PAL. And they're doing things from woodworking to robotics to dance to culinary arts. And what's great about this program is that we've really targeted our ENL population as well as students who are at risk. And we have a little win. We have a young man who every morning doesn't say hello. And now since he started this program, every morning he tells me what things he did in the after-school program. And I think that that's a big win. And we grab all those wins and collect them. So it's great. And what's nice about it is they also receive dinner and then door-to-door transportation. And so it's really, it's great. And some kids are just doing portions of it, and there's tutoring along with it, so it's great. So here's our murals, so really super excited about this. You saw one as you came in this evening on the left, and that was developed by the Art Club, and then the one at the top. It's hard to see it, but what's in that blank space is actually the Empire State Plaza. And then in the tall building, what you're going to see when it's finished is the lights are going to be darkened in with Myers. And that was actually drawn and being painted by one of our students in the 812 classroom. And Ms. Rose can attest that it's been a challenge, but since working on this, we've had no challenges. So it's working, and he's doing a great job, and he's very, very, actually made copies of it and passed it out to like 50 people. I said make a copy, and I didn't know he was going to make 50. But anyways, and we're going to have more murals go up, but those are the first two that will be done, and then we'll be doing one here in the cafeteria. We have our Black History Month door decorating contest. And thank you to Ms. Adams and Ms. McKenna, who've agreed to come tomorrow to judge that. There's some examples there. We have 28 doors that are decorated by the homerooms and the teachers. So it's pretty exciting, and they're all unique and different. So if you have a chance, walk around the building before you leave. We have our Falcons Den, which is in its infancy. It's our atrium, and PTA is working with our student government, and we'll be turning that into an area for students to go to during lunchtime, and hopefully that'll be up and running next year. And then we have a musical that we're starting here, The Lion King Jr., and our auditions are March 1st and 5th, and we're very, very excited about that as well. I wanted to say, sort of on the record, I guess, that I'm very, very thankful for these two ladies. So coming in October was quite difficult, but they have made it a phenomenal transition for me. and every day I get up and like so happy to come. So I just wanted that like on the record. Thank you. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that concludes the superintendent's report.
Mr. Grossi, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Tonight I seem to be not with the program. The Albany Board of Education, you're welcome to come up and take a seat while I'm reading this long explanation. The Albany Board of Education welcomes district residents, parents, students, and other people to our meeting. We appreciate community input about the decisions we are making. In addition to accepting comments during the public comment period, we also accept comments by email, phone, or postal mail. While you are making your remarks, keep in mind that by law, information about individual students and specific district staff cannot be shared. Every student and every staff member deserves to know that concerns about them will not be aired in public. Also, keep in mind that public comment is not the best place to first alert the district to a concern you have. Please share concerns first with relevant staff, such as the teacher or principal. If you feel the concern is not addressed adequately, you may appeal to that person's supervisor up the chain of command, if necessary, to the superintendent. Decisions made by the superintendent may be appealed to the board. Finally, please note that the board generally does not respond during the public comment period. If you need a response, please consider contacting us by email, phone, or postal mail. When I recognize you, please state your name and city of residence, and statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. You will be given a 1-minute notice and then a 10-second notice, and I will notify you when your time's expired. So thank you again, Mr. Grossi, for your patience. You're welcome to sit, or I guess you can stand.
That's right.
as
If
you
you don't
speak.
mind, I'll stand.
No,
I've
no,
been sitting
that's-
too much.
No,
so.
no, quite all right.
I'm here today as a lifelong city resident and of this neighborhood. My grandfather built a house a few blocks down in '65. So the other thing that I want to bring up is I've been a martial artist for 31 years, and as part of that practice, I've learned many things, and I've studied many different martial artists, and one of them was a very famous Japanese samurai by the name of Shinmen Musashi, and he entreated his students to first do not involve yourself in the impractical. So I would propose that we should stick with that here tonight. The issue that I'm bringing up is somewhat sensitive, frankly. I'm quite angry about it. So if I seem angry, that's why. And if I seem a little disrespectful, it's because, in my opinion, I and my neighborhood have been pretty well and truly disrespected. The issue that I'm talking about is principally the issue with the kids coming through the neighborhood and causing trouble. Now, I understand that, you know, there's been some efforts at this, and we've gone around a few times about it, and it's gotten better and then gotten worse and gotten better and worse again. But most recently, the school board has seen fit to furnish the students at, I can only assume, the taxpayers' expense with open-ended bus passes. Is this accurate? I'm assuming it is. And as a reaction to that, the kids stopped using the buses and started going out on the corner. And because they didn't want to go home, they wanted to go for a ride somewhere else, which, you know, you can't hardly blame them. I would have done the same thing if somebody gave me that latitude at that age. And then there's too many of them out there. So the answer to that was to move the bus stop for the CDTA buses down to the corner of Delaware and Whitehall, which basically takes a problem and spreads it out through the whole neighborhood. Now, we're told that there's various things we can do to help with this issue, and I'd be happy to do those things. And principally, I'm going to bring it up a second time, I'd offer my services as a martial artist to teach a class in this school. I'll come here 2-3 days a week. I'll work with your PT people, your gym coaches, and help start a program, and I think I might be able to do some good there. And there's some other things that I think we can do. But the reality is the open-ended bus passes need to be shut down, And the kids need to be moved in an appropriate and safe manner. It needs to stop being that they can wander out of the building and wander through the neighborhood willy-nilly. And there is at least certainly some number of these kids who have, I'm sure, very good reasons. They have a tough life, and they react badly sometimes to that kind of freedom. Those kids need to be bused in a particularly careful manner that keeps them from being a threat to the community.
I appreciate it. Thank you very
So-
much for coming and sharing on your concerns. Ms. Manning?
Hi. So I'm back to follow up with the school board about the middle school options and the considering relocating Arbor Hill Elementary School. If you guys remember, one of my major concerns was I didn't feel like the Arbor Hill community was brought to the table as a partner or engaged. Since I left you, I've collected almost 400 petition signatures just from Arbor Hill parents and community residents purposefully, of which I have 132 tonight, and will follow up with a PDF file because I'm a scatterbrain and left the other stack at home. But what I learned in engaging these almost 400 residents and parents was only one had heard about this option. And apparently he was somebody brought to the table this summer when I guess there were decisions being made. And there were several concerns that I promised these parents and residents I would bring back to you. The concerns surrounding relocating the elementary school to Lark Street mostly centered on safety issues and a lack of outdoor play area. But the concerns about moving it to North Albany really focused on things such as, so Arbor Hill is surrounded with 3 very densely populated affordable housing complexes, IDR Borough, Skyline, Capitol Woods. They are 1.3 and 1.4 miles away from the North Albany location. None of our children would get transportation. Many of the parents expressed an inability to pay for buses on a daily basis and said it would directly impact attendance, especially days they were broke, especially towards the end of the month, especially in bad weather. That was the biggest issue that was presented to me. The other issue was, as I brought up before, taking the only elementary school out of the community. I can say most parents were very angry. They felt like nobody came to talk to them. Nobody sent a letter. Nobody had a community meeting. And they didn't believe that the school board would even be considering taking the only elementary school out of Arbor Hill. So I just wanted to present the signatures I do have today, and I will follow up with each of the board members by email tomorrow with a PDF file and sort of the concerns I was able to bullet out from the parents, who obviously were impoverished community for obvious reasons. I can't get 20 of them to show up here tonight, but they're all very concerned and want to be involved in any decision-making about removing our elementary school. Thank you. Who can I give this to?
You can give it to our board clerk, Ms. Tibbetts. And thank you very much, Ms. Manning, for coming again. Really appreciate it. Mr. Steve Lalatz?
We're used to responding to a variety of pronunciations.
Is it Lalot?
That's an R.
Lalor?
Lawler.
Lawler. Okay, thank you. And I apologize for the pronunciation and also obviously not reading, even with my glasses. Thank you.
Well, I have problem writing once in a while myself. Well, appreciate the board coming to our neighborhood. I'm a Whitehall neighborhood neighbor here, and we have neighborhood meetings every couple of months, and it's come up several times about the problem of dismissal after 3 o'clock. And there are some, very few of the 652 that you're taking care of here that are being disrespectful to persons and property, and sometimes their behavior is risky, pushing one another into the street or taking rides down the street in garbage cans. And that was kind of humorous when we looked at it, but could be very dangerous as well. And we've had the principal, Jennifer Chaton, who came to one of our meetings, and she was open to having the community involved with this problem. And my reason for being here was to just say, well, the community is willing to be involved. You heard from one community member already tonight. But she offered several things we could do, and I just would like to give, just quickly here, to have a designated small group of neighbors meet with the student council to express our concerns. Also, to volunteer to help students during school or after school with some of the programs that could be offered with people who have different skills. And if students are identified as causing trouble to a specific neighbor or neighbors, to meet with said student in a restorative justice kind of meeting with someone in the school here who would be leading that meeting. These were all really wonderful ideas that the school came up with. But we're concerned, and we would like the superintendent of schools, the principal of the school, the board of education here to come together, even with the community, to say, how can we help one another to solve this problem? One of your goals here, as was stated tonight, was respect. And, so we would like to have some respect for our neighbors. We don't all live on Whitehall, but we're all concerned about what's happening on Whitehall, and it could happen on our streets as well. So we would like something to be done. We're willing to work with you to see if we can bring some kind of closure to what's happening here to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawler. That does conclude public comment, and we are on to routine consent. May I get a motion to adopt routine consent? Ms. Smith, Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Smith. Any set-asides? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you all. And the next topic is the discussion of the graduation rate. And I think that would probably be, is that Mrs. Adams? And is that going to be Ms. McKenna as well?
Ms. McKenna.
Thank you.
Good evening. So I have the privilege of sitting up here tonight sharing the 2017 graduation rate to the Board of Education, cabinet members, superintendent, and the community, and I'm so thrilled to be up here to be sharing this. But before I actually share the data with you, I just wanted to explain the way that the State Education Department holds districts accountable for the graduation rate. And so we actually get a district graduation rate and we get a school graduation rate. And the difference between the two calculations is that the district's graduation rate includes our out-of-district placed students, whereas the high school graduation rate, the school's graduation rate, only includes students attending and graduating from Albany High School. So that's the difference between the two, but we do have two different numbers that are reported out to the public. In addition to the two different methods of graduation rate for the school district, we also are provided with a June graduation rate, as well as another graduation rate, which includes not only June, but August graduates. So I'll share those two pieces of data in addition to the district's graduation rate and the school's graduation rate. So the district's graduation rate in June, so only those students who graduated in June, was 62% for the class of 2017. This includes Albany High School students and out-of-district placed students. I also want to share that this represents a 4% increase from the class of 2016. So we should be proud of that number. The August district's graduation rate for 2016 was 60%, and the 2017, including August graduation, was 64%. Again, this represents another 4% increase from last year to this year. Again, great job. The school's graduation rate for June was 63% graduation rate for Albany High School's class of 2017, and this includes students only attending Albany High School. This number represents a 3% increase from the class of 2016 to the class of 2017. So you can see the trend. The August school's graduation rate, again including August and June, was 62% for 2016 and 65% for 2017. And this represents a 3% increase from last year to this year. Again, awesome job. And you mentioned a little bit ago, how exciting this has been for the Albany School District, because this is the 4th consecutive year with an increase in Albany's highest graduation rate since the state started using the current methodology in 2005. And this didn't happen by mistake, by no means. The steady progress that Albany has sustained for several years now is the result of the dedication of all staff that they've given to all of our students each and every day, from leadership to the delivery of high-quality instruction in the classroom and to all the support services provided to our students. Particular areas of emphasis that have helped us to get to where we are with this graduation rate include better use of data to target instruction and supports for each student, targeted tutoring in literacy and math, continued investments in social-emotional supports, enhancing the school's culture and climate, boosting Falcon Pride among all students, staff, and families, and a continued emphasis on parent and family engagement through the Parent Information Resource Center. And we know that our work doesn't stop here. As we continue our work now and in the future, we also are working on the following areas: continuing to focus on the needs of each student, including an emphasis on data-driven instruction and decision-making, increased differentiation in instruction, and a focus on critical thinking skills, continued training for all staff and trauma-informed care for students, expanded community partnership to provide students with more opportunities for real-world hands-on learning and service experiences that support both their academic progress and their overall growth and development. And the list could go on and on and on. So I'm just thrilled to be up here to report this to you and to congratulate all of us for the work that has been done up until this point and the continued work that we will encounter together moving forward.
And Ms. McKenna, just for the record, we'll tout a little more of the horn that you spoke of, which is that we know that part of a community where there is a portion of student population that has experienced trauma and has the social emotional needs of the level of some of our student population may not always follow the same path as other students in the district in how they achieve getting their diploma and crossing the stage. And so for some of our students, that takes a path that is 5 years, and for some of our students, that takes a path that is 6 years, to not diminish the importance and the achievement that is occurring when that child gets his or her diploma. I want to point out that we do, in fact, reach the number 70% when we look at the 6-year graduation rate of Albany High School. And while, again, that no one should ever, and I know you wouldn't, and no one sitting here, ever diminish the number of years it takes, because as we know, it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you finish. And all of the staff, from support staff all the way through teaching and administration, all are to be congratulated for staying with it, for being in the trenches on a daily basis, and for seeing that our students from the ground up ultimately reach that achievement regardless of the path it takes them and the length it takes them to get there. So thank you to all of them, and to take back to the various members of the associations that are here, to thank them on behalf of the board for the work that they continue to do day in and day out in having our children reach the graduation, the apex of all of the hard work that is put in. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Adams.
Madam President, members of the board, we do have an announcement from our consent agenda with regard to a new hire into the district. Mr. Baker, would you like to do the honors, or would you?
Yes, thank you. I'm absolutely thrilled to acknowledge the appointment of, hopefully, of John Wild as the new technology coordinator, a position long awaited, at least in my department. So John comes to us from the BOCES organization. John is also an Albany High School graduate.
Oh, my goodness. That's just wonderful to hear, and welcome, and thank you for showing up at a meeting. Appreciate it. We are now up to a discussion of the proposed district calendar. Ms. Bechtel.
Good evening. I have no presentation, but the calendar is, no PowerPoint presentation. Of course, I'll have something to say. The calendar is up. The BOCES calendar was released in January. The district committee met on January 31st. That committee consists of the 3 union presidents, 3 other representatives from each of the units, and myself and Mr. Petrin. And we had a good discussion, and the calendar that we arrived at was the one that you have in front of you. I'm willing to take questions if you would like me to explain some things about how the days go in. There are 14 prescribed district days off that are in our APSU contract, and then 2 additional days that are discretionary, and we put in a variety of places depending upon what the calendar is presenting to us that year. We plan for 187 days, which is more than most districts, and we do that to have the additional 2 teacher PD days planted in the calendar. So I'm willing to take whatever questions you have. I'm ready to go.
Ms. Wilson.
The only question I had was, part of those 14 days, are there efforts made for those to coincide with the superintendent days?
The 14 days are actually on your calendar in the box. They're prescribed. They are the 4th of July. They are Labor Day. So all of those 14 days, with the exception of Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, are the 14 prescribed days right in the contract. And then there's the additional 2 that in this calendar we have put on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
Dr. Chatur.
For the last couple of years, we've had the Muslim community come and ask for a day off for one of their religious festivals, Eid. And this year, I believe it falls on June 5th.
That's correct.
So have you guys thought about making any accommodations for?
Yes. The committee did have a very solid discussion about the religious holidays. We talked about putting a PD day on June 5th. Well, actually, let me back up. The committee, in thinking about the 2 teacher PD days, which are flexible as to where we put them in the school year, the priority that emerged from the committee was the safety and security of students. It was a theme that had emerged last year, and it continues this year, of keeping the buildings secure. And so to do that, the committee really prioritized both the election days that we have, where we have the public come in the schools. And that is November 6th and May the 21st. So we talked about that, and the only days that we would have some flexibility to have the Eid holiday would be those 2 additional APSU days, or those PD days. And people really sat there. They value religious holidays. We really struggled. We have a very tight calendar. People spoke about the fact that the timing of it, in terms of instruction, is a challenge because it falls in that week or 10 days before we begin our Regents exam cycle, and how that interrupts that process. And also in this particular calendar, because we've prioritized student safety and security, that there would be a PD day on May the 21st, and then 2 weeks later, and that's not really an efficient use of professional development time to have those 2 days at the end of the year. And we also talked about sustainability of adding a religious holiday, and had some concerns about would we be able to sustain it over years. And we did try to do a little projections moving forward, but there's so many moving pieces with the calendar, it's a little tricky to try to tell. Even you'll note that Good Friday fell within the April vacation week this year, which doesn't always happen. That actually gave us an added day that we really needed in order to start school after Labor Day and end on the last day of Regents.
Ms. Lang?
Last year we spoke about the fact that the election day was on a Tuesday and that Monday, would kids come back? Did you see a high number of absentees on that Monday when you were doing whether or not parents ended up just taking a long weekend or not sending their kids on Monday because they would also have Tuesday off?
I did not check that data, but I can, and report back to the board.
So going forward, could we have that on the days that we give, so it would actually be in May and November that we'd be closing, correct?
Yes.
So why don't we get the data for both of those 2 days on the attendance rates
On the
for those
Monday.
2 Mondays and compare them to at least basically an average attendance rate for a regular Monday, probably the best way to put it.
Right.
Ms. Roach.
I just wanted to thank you for your work putting together this calendar. Also bring up a question about the order of the first. It's sort of a two-part question. It's about the days that wouldn't be the days that you would have off if there weren't snow days, because people are asking what order do those factor in? Like, I would imagine Friday would be the last one to drop, but we weren't sure. Is it written there?
It's
Yeah.
in the
Oh,
bottom of the
yeah.
box.
And I did just double check.
Bottom of
Last
the-
year when the calendar was presented to us, it was written there, but somehow in the formatting, as it became beautified,
I'm looking
it
at the
got
bottom of the
dropped.
box and I don't
It
see
says
it.
3 snow emergency days.
Yeah, oh, I
and-
see. Now I see it. Okay. But then the second part of, I apologize. The second part of my question would be, I don't know if this would fully satisfy the needs of the community that asked for Eid off, but maybe we could have it as that third snow day, so that unless we have more than 2 snow days, students would get the religious holiday off? Would that be a way to kind of make things a little better? Or would that just be sort of not, we wouldn't know? So maybe it wouldn't be a satisfactory. Okay. Because it just would seem a shame to have a day like Tuesday the 28th off, where it's less, it's not a date that anyone needs off and we could switch it around. I mean, I don't know. I understand it's only if we don't use the snow day, but, no, okay. Not really feasible.
Ms. Smith. Ms. Savage.
I think Ellen and I were having the same kind of thought. My only question is whether Mrs. Adler made an excellent point last year when we talked about the calendar, about the way those Tuesdays impact instruction, because we end up with the Monday, Tuesday, and I'm wondering if the snow day, instead of having 5 days off for Memorial Day, which creates this really, really weird week where you have Monday on, Tuesday off, Wednesday on, then Thursday, Friday off, whether one of those belongs on Monday the 20th, so that we would have potentially Monday, Tuesday off, Wednesday, Thursday on, Friday off. You understand what I'm saying? Rather than having Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday reversing. So I'm just looking for ways to have fewer stops and starts for school, and that looks like a fairly easy one for us.
I appreciate that. I would have to check and see about the contract, if there's any contract language about the snow days being scheduled around Memorial Day. I'm not sure if there is or there isn't. But I would like to say that in my memory, I mean, that one year that we had where we actually had those 3 days off was so incredibly unusual.
But we sometimes do get 1 or 2 of them.
1 or 2 of the days, which would knock out the Thursday and the Friday.
Right, I'm just suggesting that perhaps having 2 4-day weekends or a 4-day followed by a 3-day is better, I think, for most families than having school on Monday and Wednesday. That's just going to be, my prediction is that families of choice are just not going to come to school because they're going to go somewhere else leading up to Memorial Day, and children are going to miss 2 days of school, and families without choice are going to be in a really difficult situation because we know those kids have a hard time with the stop and the start and the stop and the start. So I think that this is a place where we should look to have the, I don't know how to phrase this exactly, but the snow day that's the most likely for us to actually be not in school on the 20th to create that 4-day weekend there.
So hi. So here's my issues with the thing. First, yes, thank you very much. I try to thank you as much as I can. So please don't think that my comments have anything to do with a lack of tremendous gratefulness for what is really just such a tough task with these calendars, right?
Yes.
Thankfully, we don't do this. So I have I have like 3 sets of questions. And I can do one and then go back around again. I don't know if the rest of the board has others. Anybody else have other questions? I'll just go with it. So the first one is just to segue off of what Ann said. For me, as you know, I voted against the calendar last year because of the fact that we had these 2 weeks when we had kids coming in to school and then having a day off the next day, and then having another day off at a later point in time, and that's why I voted against it. So for me, May looks about the same again. And the problem for me is disruption to the school week for not the kids who are excelling, right? I mean, that's not the issue. These are for kids who need continuity in terms of instruction. And that's probably the majority of the kids in our district. So forget the emotional disruption, as Ann was pointing out, but just academically, we're already in the end of spring, and it's a lost week. The second is the hunger factor. So we have the snow days all stuck in 1 week, and then we have that Tuesday off, and then kids are really being fed by us if we have no snow days only twice. So we're basically now not giving breakfast and lunch to students across quite a number of days. So that causes me a great deal of emotional pain. All right, so the other 2 questions are the ones I asked in the email, which are, I'll start with the BOCES question, which is if I could get some information from you tonight about my questions, which were, are there discussions with BOCES and or other schools in our BOCES catchment area about only having the Monday of President's Week off? There are not many states that still have the entire week off. Has this been explored? Is it being explored? And what are the obstacles to the school district of Albany only being closed Monday of that week? So I'm not looking for a tome right now orally, but if I could get some sense, because I know that what we were told is that is something that's discussed. So at least, so that it's not Groundhog Day every time it comes up. Maybe we can have an understanding of what the discussions have been and what the obstacles are to actually having school for most of that week, again, for continuity purposes.
I believe that's a conversation that takes place at the superintendent's meeting at BOCES, and Mrs. Adams may have some more information.
When BOCES is doing the calendar, and this is my first year going through this cycle, some of the districts do have the week off, some of them do not. And from what I can gather, and I'll have to go back and research it a little bit more, but just the very high level conversation really deals with the number of days of instruction and how many days they're in school. And then I'll have to follow up with that a little bit more.
I just want to restate what I think Mrs. Adler, one of the parts of what she was asking, because I remember asking this a couple of years ago, and I either didn't fully understand it or don't retain it. What prevents us, as a non-BOCES compact school, from going our own way on the calendar and not having that February break? I know there's something. I know it has to do with certain children who would be impacted by that, but I can't retain the detail of that. Can you fill us in now, or is that something you'd want to do after? Because for us, it seems like, who cares what BOCES does? Why don't we just do our own thing? And I know there's a reason, I just can't understand what it is.
Well, I think even before I go there, I do want to say we have to schedule 187 days. So even if we decided to make the February the days of instruction, there would still be 187 days in this calendar from September to June.
Yeah, and one thing you said tonight, and it was in a bit of a passing moment, I know I'm stealing your time, I'm sorry, was that the last day of school is the last day of Regents. Did I
Yes,
understand that correctly?
that's correct.
Because I think that's one of the things that I had not really understood about the calendar process before, so that the end of school is currently, the way we do our calendar now, is fixed based on the end of Regents Week.
Yes, except this district has had PD days following
For
the.
this last day of
Right.
students.
Students are done, the last day of Regents.
And we always do it that way. The
That is
last day
correct.
of school is always the last day, the last Regents offered.
yes.
Because I think that's where I think people think about the February break is for those of us who don't have children yet at high school, it's like, well, couldn't we just make the school year shorter, right? We would end a week early if we didn't have the February break. But you're saying no, in fact, that it would always be the last day of school.
Exactly. We do have to go to the end of Regents. We have to build a 187-day calendar. It's June, the end of June, yes, the last day of Regents. We have gone before Labor Day and after Labor Day. We have that flexibility. We have started the school year in August. And not in, yeah, within the last few years, I think the August 31st or August 30th. For, maybe not for children, but for teachers coming in, yes. And there is programming. My understanding, and I'm going to maybe look to, Lori may have a little bit more knowledge of this, but there is, we follow the BOCES calendar due to some programming too, right? Is there programming in that week as well, or no? Right, like if we were open and in February and BOCES isn't, our placement, our out-of-district placement students.
Right, so just to get back to, because my questions, but my understanding was about one thing, the only thing I do recall being clear on was that we had issues about our out-of-district placement special ed students, and I just didn't know the extent of if that was the only issue, not to, again, to diminish it, but to understand what really the contours of that problem were.
There's that. I think as Mrs. Savage pointed out, if we have to end the last day of Regents Week, we're not saving anything in a 187-day calendar.
The other question then I wanted to ask in terms of being explored is the issue of, in terms of the calendar, is having the 4 days off, which is in my tenure from my first child through now in the district at Albany High School, we always had this Regents Week that, you know, most schools do not have off across the state. And it actually was a surprise to me until one of my kids tried to schedule a visit with another friend of his in Long Island to find out that they have class in January. And then I thought, oh, so I again made an assumption that the reason that we did not have class in January for 4 days at the high school was because we had such a low graduation rate that we must have so many students taking the Regents. So A, is my assumption incorrect? And B, why are we not having classes for 4 days at the high school if it doesn't have to do with staff and room allocation for Regents?
So I thank you for your question. It is actually very standard practice across the state to have those days in the high school is not as days of instruction. In fact, my sister-in-law in Long Island, her son just went through a whole week in January. What some schools choose to do is, if they're smaller and maybe not administering as many Regents exams as other schools, they might give midterms. I've seen that happen in smaller districts. But we actually, this past January, administered or scheduled 1,100 Regents exams. And we serve, as you know, a large ENL population. We have translators that come in and need their private settings. We have special education students who are taking Regents exams, and it has nothing to do with our graduation rate at all. It has to do with that the state has afforded students the opportunity to, 3 opportunities to pass those benchmark tests. I think, I want to say maybe, was it 12 years ago? The transition, I think, was in the early 2000s, when those 5 Regents exams became a mandate, a requirement for graduation for everyone, and they, sort of slowly rolled that in. If you're going to make those exams a mandate, you have to give children every opportunity to pass that test. Of course, our goal is to have students pass it for the first time around, but in our school, that doesn't always happen. And so we have interventions in place for students to come back around and then retake that test and have another chance at it. And it's been part of why our graduation rate has been slowly increasing, is that we're providing those interventions and then preparing students to have success the next time around. It's a very traditional thing here in this region to have those 4 days off. What districts do with them. We also score. So I have to speak about scoring. We have to have teachers' committees of scoring. We have to have the rooms. We could never run a bell schedule.
So then it is staff and room resource and allocation. Okay, well, I appreciate it. Now I'm all the wiser. Any other questions, Ms. Lang?
Follow up on yours. So the high school then is permitted to have less days than the elementary as per state.
Regents' days are considered days
That's
of
what
days of instruction.
They are. Okay, thank you.
And that's even if you're not taking the Regents. It's just a
Yes.
day of instruction, even sort of like if a tree makes a and falls in the forest. Kind of thing. So if your child is not in school that day, it still counts.
It is a student attendance day, exactly.
Any other questions for Ms. Bechtel on this? Ms. Roach?
Again, looking at the calendar, and I know you expressed the concern about trying to keep those professional development days reasonably spaced out. So you've got the one, September, November, and March. And then the teacher PDs on September 5th and May 21st. But to be honest, it really is, especially after the presentations that we had the comments we had last year from the community. It's important to me as respecting the cultural diversity in the district that we make an effort to have the holiday off, and even if it means bunching up the 2 PD days, taking that PD that's scheduled for March 22nd and moving it to June 5th, I would rather bunch up those PDs to have them a few weeks apart than after several, we've had several years in a row people coming to us asking for this, and at this point, I'm not sure of the demographics, but I'd wager we have possibly more Muslim students than Jewish students at this point. And we've got the Jewish holidays off, we've got the Christian holidays off. It's really something I think, even if it's creates some inconvenience, it's important to me that we find I know we couldn't make it happen last year because we didn't have time to make it happen, but we've had a year. I think we need to make it happen this year, in my opinion, if there's any way to do it.
I am at the discretion of the board and the board discussion. As stated, the early June is a little problematic because of the Regents exams and the prep that's going on. One of the committee's recommendations around this, because they were really very sensitive to it, was that we work on a really good communication plan for our Muslim population, that we make sure that families know that their children can take those days off with no penalty, that we will work with students to make sure that whatever work there might be, that we try to ensure that there are spaces. We do this already, that there are spaces for prayer. We talked about those things, the communication, and even someone had suggested, especially like at the elementary level, is there a way to do an in-school celebration because for this day? And so they were sensitive to the idea, but concerned about the fact that unlike any other district that I know of, we have to schedule 187 days a year, and the calendar gets tight, and the sustainability of it could be a challenge. But as I said, I'm at the discretion of the board, and you will make your decision.
Dr. Chatur?
Let me get this right. So the last day of school is 26 because of Regents, right? But
Correct.
Elementary school and middle school kids don't take Regents, right?
Correct.
So why do we have to have last day of school for them to be the 26th? Why not move those days ahead? That those 3 days where we're talking about, you come in on a Monday, you have Tuesday off, then you come in on Wednesday, and you have Thursday and Friday off as possible snow days. Going back to the argument that, Ann and Sue were talking about that week,
The student, I'm not sure that I'm following you. The students,
Leave, every
they
student.
need to be in 187 days or I'm sorry, the students are less. The student attendance days are 182.
Right.
Included, and then if you add the snow days, we have to schedule for 185. So I'm not
Right,
sure.
what I'm saying is like, why not schedule those snow days towards the end for the middle school and the elementary school, so that if they're done, the week before they're done, they have a longer summer?
Well, if we scheduled them, I can't schedule them during Regents Week because I have kids coming in for Regents Week, and if I scheduled them all
Yeah, this is where my question is like, do you need to have the same calendar for the high school kids, the middle school kids, and the elementary school kids?
Yes.
Or could you have elementary and middle school?
it really does need to be the same for the
Why?
for district. Well, first of all,
Different staff, different,
I don't know where I would put those days. As I'm looking at this calendar, I don't know how I would end school for elementary kids on, say, June 21st. Where am I going to make up their 182 days?
I take those 3 snow days that you have marked up there for
And
the
put them
elementaries,
at
put
the
them at the
end?
end.
No, because those are APSTA. Those days, if we do not use the snow days, those are days off. So we
if you
have
don't
too
use
much of
those-
a cross K-12 district services that we would be able to put those snow days there. So I'm trying to think of a scenario. So we don't use any snow days. So children in the elementary K-8 end on the 21st. And then I'm not sure what we would do with middle school graduation because those are those last couple of days. So that planning is kind of strange.
Okay.
And then we'd have all K-8 staff off, and I actually believe the district office may close. I'm really good, you've thrown me.
I mean,
Madam
I'm not trying to
President,
confuse,
Madam
I'm just trying to
President, members of
understand
the
how this
board.
process works.
Madam
Yes.
President, members of the board, Dr. Chatur, we can look at that. I'm going to say that this process, to try and do it on the fly to restructure a calendar right now, we can't. I'm just going to tell you right now, we can't. Can we take this back and try
We can't
and
even schedule our own meeting, so I
Yeah.
understand that.
but I will say this, what we can do, we can take your suggestion and spend some time to think about it and try and process to see the feasibility of it. And I have sent a note up to BOCES just to find out what are some limitations that we may have. And so hopefully we'll have some answers about that pretty soon, maybe not tonight, but by tomorrow. And we can take some time to look at that and then send that information forward.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to make a mountain out of a mole. I'm just trying
No,
to
but I see
understand
Karen.
the
I
process.
see Karen's wheels turning
Right.
because Karen lives this calendar, and I see her wheels trying to turn about the feasibility and all of the things that go into that. And in 2 minutes, we're not.
Because some
gonna
of these
be
things
able
come
to
up
do
every
that.
year, so we just,
Yeah.
I think all members of the board just want to have an idea as to what are limitations, what are boundaries.
Right.
Just
And
so
so
that next year,
hopefully we
we
can
don't have to
have
ask the
that.
same question again.
Right. So hopefully we can get that to you, and we'll be happy to provide that, and we'll spend some time just kind of thinking about the feasibility of it.
Can I ask if there's any direction from the board
So I'm
around
gonna,
the
I promise
equality?
I'll get to that, and I'm just gonna see if anybody has any more questions, and then I was going to try to articulate that in a sort of, moving forward, if not for this year, then for next year, the ideas that this board has spoken to over the last couple of years is what we call not the non-negotiables, but how to try to get to that point without having those things come up again. So, Ms. Wilson.
Actually, I'm going to be all set in lieu of what the superintendent just said. She just highlighted that this process is fluid, and I think what I was going to speak to, what Sridhar and everyone else is pointing to, is that your pain points are unique, but then the community has pain points. But like she said, we're going to take it back and review it, so it's fine.
Thank you. Ms. Lang, anything? Ms. Roach, anything left? Ms. Smith? Ms. Savage?
My last thing, and this my fellow board members have heard me say, is that whatever decision we make about Eid, I would like there to be some established criteria about how we define religious holidays that are not contractual, and that would go for our existing ones of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, as well as for any potential new ones. Whatever our process is for deciding what metric we get to justify a day off of school, they should be the same for everyone, and they should not be reinvented every single year. So I would like, whatever decision we make, I'd like there to be some parameters around it so that we can have a understanding, so that if we have an influx of a different group in the future, which is extremely likely given how our world is changing and our refugee situation is changing, if not right now, in a few more years, we might have another influx of a different group. And I would like to have some set of criteria that we have established.
So in answer to your question about the sort of parameters or going forward, if not for this year, it sounds like the things that have come up have to do with trying very, very hard. And again, this is not suggesting you don't do this, but I'm not saying that everybody in BOCES has the same issues or the same concerns that our community may have. So for us, it's, I believe what we've been discussing is minimizing the number of days off in the same week, minimizing the disruptive nature of multiple days off in a week, or even minimizing disruptive where if there's one day off in the week, it's not a Monday or a Friday. Because it's just, if our attendance, you know, if you're in a 99% attendance rate district or 98%, that's very different than if you have 92%. And if 92% and you have a Tuesday off or you have a Thursday off, kids are going to not show up for the Friday as well or not show up for the Monday. And I know we haven't been tracking it, but that's the sense the board has been discussing over the years. So there's the hunger and disruption issues, like I say, come up when we have the multiple days, when the multiple days aren't strung together, when they extend too far out, so it's almost like an entire week off. And then when we have this sort of stuck in the middle, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then the other is the issue of the sensitivity to religious holidays and the fact that when the calendar, again, this may be something that requires just a little research, so when you come back, let's say next year with the calendar, looking at aid now, is I had asked Vicki when you were presenting in the beginning, do the charters close for that holiday? Do they have no school? I mean, I would be wondering in the city of Albany, not because we stand in the same shoes of them, but because I would wonder how they treat the holiday as well. I'm less concerned about maybe how Guilderland treats it, even though they're a representative of the BOCES community for purposes of calendaring. So that is a community consideration. And while down the road there may be other religions, there is a sensitivity that next go round, we try to, even if it's not the most optimum or the PD days are a little closer than we might want, that we try to ahead of time figure out what the calendar would look like to be able to at least give one day off to our Muslim community, out of us, which would be a sign of respect, and then to figure out how the calendar would look to incorporate that. And maybe then next year what happens is the board discusses, we've had this in where we've changed procedures in a bit and we've kind of backward mapped in a way that, so we have a discussion before you bring to us the draft calendar and make sure that the concerns are articulated again by the board, so that when you sit down with the committee, you can actually sort of have a list, which isn't really all that long, even if it may be difficult to meet, but at least have those concerns so that when you come back with the first draft calendar, you're able to come back and then be able to specifically address the very concerns that seem to be from year to year foremost for the board. So I think that's what we would ask. So thank you for all your hard work. Again, a very thankless, but we thank you task. So
Somebody has to do it. Thank you.
And we are now up to Mr. Baker for the website development discussion.
Good evening. I thank you for this opportunity to bring you up to date on current status of a far-reaching project, that being the redefinition of our web presence. And my goal here tonight is to actually weave a bit of a narrative and talk about things that aren't represented on the text of slides. That's been presented to you prior. We can all read that information, so I'd like to try to bring it together in a more meaningful way. And I'll start with just a general overview of why we are where we are at this point. We decided to embark upon redefining the web presence because it's the right thing to do in the sense that we want to engage our community fully, bring content to them in meaningful ways, in ways that are easy to get to. And we also want to make sure that we are creating a true two-way communication vehicle. So right now we're at a place in our web presence where we have a set of what I'll label static content pages that are based on an architecture that is not, I'll refer to in our world as extensible, meaning there aren't a lot of entry points or ways for us to make this content more dynamic. It also is out of compliance with accessibility standards in regard to affording people with disabilities access to content in an equitable way. So the driving force behind this work really is to provide a full and complete experience to all of our users in terms of what we bring to them through the web. So the scope of this work is rather large, and the goals that are part of this work are really tied to, in my mind, addressing deficiencies and truly becoming that two-way vehicle that engages our user base. It's really, about us delivering customer service in a way that's really, really important and meaningful. We're owners and producers of the content, but we're really not the ones who would use the site in a way that we'd expect our community to. So we're going to have to defer to what our users are expecting and needing and work toward bringing the presence to meet their need. There are a lot of challenges when it comes to developing web content, and it's because there are so many layers to it. There's a whole technical realm that is challenging and complex. Then there's the element of the content itself, the design, the layout, the structure. So all these things together create, actually a lot of job opportunities for people out in the world. And typically, social sector organizations, school districts in particular, are woefully under-equipped to really develop content, maintain it, host it properly. And so I'm just referring to a couple of stats I pulled from IBM when they looked at redesigning and complying with web accessibility standards. And you'll see that about 5% of our organizations are prepared to do this work. And it's more problematic when you're looking at actually remediating content and also redeveloping a whole new platform. So remediation on its own means going back and taking what you have and making it accessible within the same context or the same platform or vehicle, whereas redesign is truly building from ground up a whole new web platform or method of delivery. So these are just some general costs I've put together, and on average, a full scope redesign, including compliance with accessibility standards, is a $100,000 plus proposition. And I'll just point out too that these numbers are based on 100-page websites. We have about 2,000 pages currently in our website.
Oh boy.
And as a school-related example, we've chosen to enter into a method of remediation that is voluntary, meaning we've put together a resolution agreement. We want to serve our community better. We want to have a website that is a true vehicle or communications hub. A school district that chose to not go down that path and rather challenge in a legal platform found themselves on the other end of a $800,000 proposition, all said and done. So I pulled the case of Seattle School District, and granted there are some differences in size. However, it's a similar enough case where you can get a sense of how costly this work can be, and I'm going to go back to the previous slide. It's mostly because schools do not have on staff folks who are able to really engage in this kind of work, so you end up farming it all out. And in doing that, you are incurring a great number of costs. So when it comes to approaching this kind of project, we're using a pretty standard methodology here. And the trick really now is to arrive at a place where we are blending all of these technical elements and the platform itself that will deliver content into a user interface that then engages the client or the end user in such a way that that experience is meaningful for them. That becomes what's known as the UX, basically. So the critical points here are creating that environment, that platform that is extensible, is able to tie in all kinds of integrations and things we're used to seeing when we engage with web content, and bringing that into a shell that is not only meaningful to the user, but consistent, has a sense of branding, and is reliable. So all of these stages together have, in my mind, this kind of through line, which is really the end user, the user engagement part as the driver. So to date on the migration end, I'll basically say that we have, I feel, a blank canvas now. We have chosen a content management system, a platform or vehicle to deliver our new website. It is inherently compliant with web accessibility standards, meaning that the framework itself will provide for the use of assistive technologies when navigating the content. We've also selected a base skin or a theme, which is kind of the graphical user interface that is fully customizable at this point. However, in itself is also compliant with WCAG and also ADA requirements. And we've selected a group of modules that will allow us to integrate a whole host of features and function into the framework. On the accessibility side, we basically have created all the guiding documents that define our commitment to accessibility. We've engaged the work of a third-party auditor to give us an overall sense of the scope of remediation that's going to be required. And we've also put together a training framework that will afford all of our users who are going to be ultimately producers of content, awareness of standards, and also our goal in delivering content to all users. So what's left at this point is to shift this focus now from the development of the technical infrastructure to actually the end user, the most important part of this work. And it begins right now. This is a fortuitous time to present to you. It is my hope that by the end of next week, if not before March 1st, we will put out the first leg of our first phase of our community engagement plan. We'll be soliciting input from the broader user presence scope, and also ultimately drilling down through focus group work to engage the ultimate user base and helping us to define how these things can blend together and provide that meaningful experience that we're hoping to deliver. In regard to accessibility, we've got just a few things left, and really it's mostly about, at this point, continuing to provide training for our user base, those of us who will be producers of content. And in a project of this scale, it's just absolutely open to what I'll call scope creep, meaning things will develop that were not part of the original defined scope of work, but are to be expected. My grandfather was a bus driver for Greyhound. He said, "You expect the unexpected." That was their motto. So that's kind of what scope creep means to me. So a few things just worth noting. As we bring in new functionality, we will have to look at how we define some business processes around engaging our user base in terms of the two-way communication. There might be some governance and oversight considerations that would need attention from the board, perhaps converting some guidelines into policy. And we also are going to have to, I think, to make use of this, ultimately engage our own internal staff and shift to an intranet method of delivering documents and organizing conversations and sharing work internally on kind of a closed-in version of this website. So this, I hope, kind of sums up better than I have so far the goal here. We're trying to blend in this Venn diagram 3 discrete areas of work that ultimately will produce this user experience, this UX. So it's a constant struggle, and none of these things can be done mutually in a mutually exclusive approach. They cannot be siloed. They are interrelated in many ways, but the ultimate goal is, if you are able to pull this off, the blending of a robust, scalable, extensible infrastructure and a consistent, friendly user interface, you will truly engage and afford your end users that total experience that one would expect when arriving at a website with a particular purpose. And lastly, just in terms of status, this graphic tries to present to you the kind of 2 parallel scopes of work, and the idea that this is not linear in any way. There are many interrelationships, and a lot of things are taking place simultaneously. But the most critical parts start now, from February through our soft go live, which will be in August, and right up through, at this point in time, would be our hard go live date of September 1.
Thank you, Kent Baker. It is such a treat to be in the 21st century under your CIO leadership. So thank you very much, Ms. Roach. I'll start with you.
I just had a question that I almost don't want to know the answer to, but it's about the board doc system we use and about how compliant that is as far as having a lot of the documents in PDF format.
We've sought that answer out, and at this stage is undetermined.
Okay.
We don't have a definitive answer on whether or not it meets compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Lang.
I think I'd rather have Karen's job with the calendar, but when everyone kept saying how daunting that was. This is something that, on the outside is very important, and getting our data, getting our communication, and I want to thank you for breaking it down into terms that I don't really understand. But I know they're going to get there. So my question is, as far as getting into the websites and the knowledge and the upkeep, is that going to be centraled in your office and communication as principals, and how much PD would go into how those people are responsible for doing that if they are responsible?
Yep. So part of what makes this such a complex project now and sustainably is that it requires the old takes the village kind of a methodology. So right now, in terms of project lead, it is a combination of my office and Ron's office. And we're at the place now where we're going to further define the roles in regard to management and oversight. But I think once the system itself is established, we've gone through UAT, which is user acceptance testing, and all those later stages before we launch. My office will be critically involved still. I think once we get to a place of production where the site is established, and we are then bringing in layers of users to produce content, that being the schools themselves and whatever representatives want to put their own pages up from within the school scopes, or whether it goes down to the teacher level, which it ultimately will. That's one of the nice things about this particular platform, is that we will be able to afford every school, every club or organization, every teacher an opportunity to create their own portal inside of this, or their own site. It'll be consistent, it'll be branded, you'll know you're in our district presence somehow, but it will also have the identity that reflects that particular school or teacher or organization. So in that regard, when it comes to this, it's a distributed leadership approach. So the content pieces will be owned by the content producer. So that could be the school, and meaning in many ways means the principal. The part that I skipped over here is one of the really important features in this site is something called workflow, which really allows us to pinpoint who truly has oversight over content So any producer can create it, and it'll sit in this little draft stage and will not be published until someone basically authorizes that, make sure it meets the requirements, make sure it's reflecting a particular message or whatever. So I think there will be roles for leadership at many stages. So centrally, certainly from my office and Ron's office or Mr. Lesko's communication office, from the building leadership level, it can be a principal, an assistant principal, or designee, and it could be right down to a teacher or club advisor, frankly. So there are a lot of options for that, but the training part is a huge, huge piece of this. It's not only about the knowledge of accessibility. We got to this place because we, in some ways, weren't thinking about all of our end users to begin with, but it's also important that the users are familiar with the tool that they're going to be using to create content. So there are 2 layers of training that will take place, and that's one of the requirements before anyone can produce a piece of content and have it posted, is that they go through training for both accessibility and also for the platform.
Dr. Chator.
I don't envy your job. Yes, I have a couple of questions. They're tied to each other. So, you talk about seeking community design input. Like, what are the kind of things you're expecting from what kind of feedback are you expecting? The reason why I ask is because, SUNY has tried to do this and stuff. When you start having these meetings, it just blows out of proportion, and then you don't achieve anything at the end. So how do you, what are the things you're going to define? The second thing I'll also ask the question now is, when you do the implementation, are there going to be opportunities for our high school kids, for example, who are doing video and all of those, to basically either learn how to do these things or to apply what they have learned, maybe in a small concept model or something like that?
Yes. So those are 2 very good questions. And so when it comes to engagement, you're absolutely right. You certainly can't solicit the explicit opinion of 10,000 people and make that meaningful. However, we can truly welcome the input from that many people and use ways to parse out themes. So for the first layer of engagement, we'll be putting out basically it's a survey to anyone via the web. And we'll ask high-level questions about, why do you go to our website? What do you like about it? What would you consider a quick and immediate improvement to the current structure? We'll ask things about preferences for layout. Do you like a side menu, a top menu? So you get some really generalized questions out there. Like I said, you'll start to see patterns evident fairly quickly. And then ultimately what you do is work down into a user group or a focus group approach. And no matter how large the project is, a focus group should never be more than 12 people tops. And that's where we'll get. So we'll work with a focus group methodology at the end, and we'll probe more deeply into some of those questions, and we'll produce follow-up questions. But I think that there are only so many questions you can ask. There are only so many answers that you'll get. And what you will find, though, is those key themes will be the top 2 or 3 things that will really, really inform our design. I mean, that's really the critical part. We know what content we have that we need to get out. We have a general idea of how we can do that. It's really about the layout, how people like to get to things, what kinds of input opportunities they like to have. So, it's a multifaceted approach, but it'll be meaningful if we're able to parse out the data appropriately. And the second part is we are going to explicitly focus on students in a couple of ways. So one of the focus groups we'll have will be student only, because we really truly do want to get that user base. When I was talking to the superintendent, I'm pretty confident in this. I doubt that our students really look to our website for much. I think it's a very different user base, and I'm curious about how we could re-engage the younger demographic, I guess. We also have the fortune to have a student help desk that works within my office, and those students they have a technical inclination, first of all, but they're not necessarily technical people. And I think that'd be a good group that we could start to engage in when I talked about undefined processes, because we haven't had some of these features yet. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to engage our student help desk and other of our burgeoning computer science stack classes to engage in some of the work to support us. Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Being that Shradar stole my high school kid questions, okay if I have two questions and like a
So when he
wish list?
steals one, you get like a multiplier as a result of it. This is a mathematical quandary for me, but of course.
And that is-
Just
okay.
remember that we are off schedule by about 10 minutes now.
Basically piggybacking off of his end user research question, I was just wondering about any sort of like preliminary data collection that's going to be targeted to get feedback about increasing community engagement and also improving community outreach. So you don't have to answer that, but I just want to know if you're going to incorporate that. And the other thing is that in your presentation you mentioned information resources, media content going through the fabric of the entire school community. So I wanted to post or sort of posit that you sort of incorporate maybe partnering with groups and community organizations and maybe working backwards. So for example, just an example would be like early childhood pre-K, the applications we mentioned. If we know we're going to put that on the website like September 1st, finding out who we can also work with so that everyone knows is going on the website September 1st. And then the two like wish list things that I was thinking about, you mentioned website accessibility. In addition to that, plain accessible language, like, you know, plain language, and also any way to push notifications also to phones, like SMS or things like that, Facebook, mobile, from our district page on there to Facebook and things like that.
So I am going to take the opportunity to provide some information at a later date on some of those questions, but when it comes to integration of function, particularly notification and other systems, yes, that will be part of what we're able to provide in this new platform. So yes, the two-way that's part of the two-way communication model, yes.
Ms. Roach. Ms. Smith?
So everyone stole my questions. No, but Ken, I have to say that this is one of the more fascinating reads. Like I know just enough. Like I was like, oh, this is really exciting. So I appreciate that. I know, I'm such a nerd. But I just wanted to thank you. And I wanted to know about like sort of a different kind of calendar feature. Did you already know what I'm going to ask about?
But
I
please,
mean,
no. Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to know how that would, what your thinking is about how that would be built in. And I'm thinking that, like, you know, what we have now is nice. It's just a PDF thing, but I always have trouble seeing it.
Yes, so there,
Yeah.
currently, the function is built for a dynamic calendar that is aggregated, meaning that there'll be a district component and an individual site or school-based component, and they can reflect events from each other. People will be able to sign up to have notifications from that calendar. It's clickable. It will include things such as even maps and all kinds of function built into it.
They're very happy. Ms. Savage?
You really only had to say calendar, and that like one word, and everybody would have been all good. So I want to echo the thanks of my colleagues for the professionalism of the presentation and the underlying documents that we saw. Fantastic. When I think about the fact that we did not have a CIO when we joined this board, when I joined this board, and that's only been 3 years, it is amazing what a giant leap forward we've made in a very short time. So while we want to jump even farther, we do understand how far and quickly we've come, and we thank you for that. So I've heard you say several things tonight that sounded like commitments to scope. I heard you say commitment to workflow. I heard a commitment to a calendar. I heard a commitment to push notification. I heard a commitment to the existing content being migrated and to a mobile-friendly site. I heard all those things specifically. And I also saw it written in the slides, August 2018. And I'm kind of wondering, first of all, if you've carefully defined anything as out of scope already, and what your level of confidence is that you can deliver the scope that I've just described, and anything else you want to throw in there, where you are on level of confidence for delivery in August 2018, because I fully respect the decision-making process you made to get to .NUC.net. I mean, that's clearly, I think, a very well thought-through decision. But in terms of functionality, we have a long way to go from February to where we are. So it's very short.
That's a reasonable question, and I was in no way doubtful that you would understand what the scope of a project like this is. So my level of confidence and commitment is high, but there are some points I will make. One is that I mentioned we have 2,000 pages of content. When we really parse it out, right now we're doing some mapping to understand what's legacy, and you don't have to bring everything over. So I believe what we'll actually want to bring over is live kind of working content is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 900 pages. So the scale of migration is less than what currently exists in the site. However, one of the things I did build in the unknowns is the extent to which we may need to seek some support for the migration. So capacity, I mean, I know we have the capability, the skills to do that, but the capacity in terms of the volume is one thing that is somewhat undefined. And if I feel that we're going to be off schedule, we'll seek out some support to make that happen. The other thing that's worth noting is I believe it was Ellen's question about board docs. We have a whole host of content that is, and I shouldn't have used hosted, but we have a whole bunch of content that's hosted elsewhere, in other words, on third-party sites. And what part of this migration is going to involve us, frankly, clipping external links until we're able to bring, in other words, if we have a teacher or a school site that's on a Weebly or is one of these third parties, we're not saying cease and desist, but we're going to have to remove the links from our district trunk to that content until such time as we can bring their content over in stages. So when I'm talking about our migration, I'm talking about our trunk, and I referred to that in one of our other documents. That's our albanyschools.org domain, and also the subordinate k12.ny.us. So that is the scope of migration at this point in time. But the function and features I've described, I'm confident in delivery of those.
Ms. Roach.
Yeah, I was going to have a follow-up question about the Weeblies, because a lot of times, you search for if you Google some permutation of a school name or a school organization, you get pulled to the Weebly and you may not know, oh, gee, this is not the official website. So I was concerned as to whether the scope would involve basically scrubbing all the Weeblies from existence and migrating them over. But I'm glad to hear that, we're aware that they exist and that we're going to be working to respectfully.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
That's another phased migration, and it's going to be deliberate, and we will have to work with the owners of that content. I can't go into someone's Weebly site and migrate their content. I don't have any access to it.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we're not just going to, I don't know, issue an edict saying everybody take it down tomorrow or something.
So we are way over time. I know Ms. Savage has another question, so I'm going to have her ask that, and unless someone has something that really has to be asked.
Are we way over? I think we're just about on, actually.
we-
Yep, budget development's supposed to start at 8:55, and it's 8:57, so we're
Okay,
pretty
so we're
close.
just slightly over. Go
slightly
for it.
over. But I
Yes.
promised. Yeah, okay. So my question is, I assume as part of your development process, you plan to or already have done some analytics on what we're doing currently, so you actually know what's
hotspots, heat
like what's
mapping.
actually
Yes. Mhm.
being used.
Mhm.
Okay, and that was sort of a side question. The real question is, how are you going to measure success? And I don't mean the success of your implementation, because I'm sure something is going to happen by August of 2018. We believe in you. But how are you going to measure whether this website is better than the other website, and that we've actually gotten something out of our investment in this migration?
I guess, so one method would be to look at activity. So to go back to, like you said, I do know where we are right now. We've done some heat mapping to see where the hotspots are. And so the one thing that we'll be able to do now in this current platform is not only measure hits, like we have very limited access to data where we currently sit, but I'll be able to use deeper analytics to not only view page visits, but length of visits, content accessed, all those kinds. So we'll be able to measure engagement better. How long is someone on the site? Did it cause them to go somewhere else, and all those kinds of things. The second part will be I will continue to stay connected to our focus group, because that was the group with whom we shared a lot of conversation and design input. We will have put forth the UI based on their feedback, and we'll defer back to them in some ways to measure effectiveness. Beyond that, I don't have another methodology off the top of my head.
It might be interesting, just as part of your survey that you're going to do anyway, to do a qualitative, how do you like our current site, or what are the problems with it? Because then you could repeat that survey a year and a half or 2 years from now, and we could have some longitudinal data on website satisfaction.
Sure.
So it might just be interesting. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation. Very much appreciated. Budget development. Ms. Primero, Mr. Hogan. I thought it was part of your disco February combination Black History Month, and now we're into disco at the end of the month, and then we're going to be moving into jazz or something.
This is just on the directory, in case we want to pull something up.
Got it.
And I have the summary sheet here, in case we need detail on the green bars. And then this is the whole thing.
I actually did believe in the beginning that it was sort of an environmental thing, and it was shutting down to be efficient, but... Oh. You thought it was... Maybe people have to move more over there, administrators. You have to just move your hands so everybody knows that there are people over there. All right.
We're actually going to have that looked at over the break.
Oh, sure. Add it to your to-do list, Mr. Hook.
Yes.
Here we go, budget.
And I want to thank Kent Baker for putting everyone in a happy mood. So let's have a happy budget conversation. If it works out, Kent, next week I want you back, okay? So we're going to talk about the 18-19 budget development. Oh, come on. That one's not working out. Oh, all right. Thank you very much. So we're going to kick off. Oh, here we go. There we go. Okay, so here is our agenda for this evening that we'll go through. It won't take as long as it looks. We always want to kick off with the vision, mission, and goals because the budget needs to be aligning our resources towards these efforts. Here is the upcoming budget calendar. The next time we meet, well, actually will be very soon because we have the break next week, and then we'll be back. There'll be another draft issued of the full budget. So our first slide here is what we refer to as a base budget, and what it essentially carries existing programs forward, kind of based on current staffing levels, but there are not mandated issues in here yet. There is not additional staffing needed for enrollment. It does not include essential items that you will see later that we believe are pretty critical to continuing our programming and the services we offer. So it's really just a really rough starting point. You'll notice that the dollar increase is $6.653 million, and most of that actually is driven what you see below. 2.4 million of the 6.65 increase million of expenses is actually going to be by additional expenses in charter school tuition, community schools, property tax, certiorari's, and bond payments on capital projects. But as is noted here, we are actually getting additional offsetting revenues to cover those costs. So in other words, 2.4 million of the 6.6 million growth in expenses is going to kind of have a net zero impact because there are additional revenue streams coming in to cover those. So that leaves us with $4.2 million of growth, which again, these are just 7 items out of over 1,000 budget items and lines that we look at. But $4.2 million of other increasing expenses represent non-resident tuition, the change in the assumptions of the teacher's retirement system, which are going to increase our cost over $1 million on that one item alone, and the ongoing increases in health insurance Nationally, the norm is 7 to 8% growth a year, so we're probably going to end up in that range. And health insurance is a very big number in this district, so 8% of a big number is a big number. So that is a short version, abbreviated version of where we're kicking off from. The next section we want to just talk about are the mandates that will further increase expenditures. Mandates are required by federal, state, and/or state education department regulations. We have a couple additional private schools opening up. We're required by law to provide health services to those. We have growth, and the kids are actually already in pre-K, but we know based on the numbers and the identification of services already needed for these students that we will need these additional staff next year to be in compliance with the services they need. Speech therapist is along with those lines as well. And the translation services are required based on New York State test accommodations. And you have to remember, our English as a new language student population has been growing by 200 to 300 students a year for several years now. So there's over 1,200 of those students now. So this will parallel the growth in these costs, is going to have some correlation with the growth of the student population. So if we take the original stripped down budget and we add the mandates, our expenses grow, you will see, to almost $7.6 million, or 3.16%. If nothing else changed and we didn't need any additional items and we didn't receive any additional state aid, that would take either budget reductions or a tax levy increase of less than 1%. The next items that we want to talk to are items that are considered and highly recommended by staff to be essential to the current educational programming and health and safety. And this next slide simply shows services that are needed because of enrollment increases in various areas. The court liaison, there's been a change in the law that we actually have to increase the age population, expand the ages that we have to service, so that will require additional staffing. The social studies teacher, I think we have 10 stipends. We need to actually put in a full-time position and reduce the stipends. The O'Neill building, as you recall, that was planned as a phase-in of students. The 7th grade class now needs a second team of teachers. They're going to be getting an additional 80 to 100 kids. We're actually expanding a grade section at New Scotland Elementary, a kindergarten section. Oh, I'm sorry, we're reducing one. And that'll put that to 3 deep. One ENL teacher for O'Neill. We need some additional staff in the music area. And then the registered nurse, there's only a .2 here requested, which will go to the high school phys ed area for all the physicals, et cetera, that they have to do. So here's one group of what are considered to be essential items, and these are enrollment driven. And on the next slide, slide 9, you will see other items that at this point are not included in the base budget, but they're considered essential. Hall monitors at the Albany High School, the request is for 3 additional hall monitors. The interscholastic entry fees have increased. There's a lot of changes going on in technology, but this area primarily deals with Microsoft licensing and support, and there's also going to be increased support and maintenance for the new school management system. The assistant principal at New Scotland, it's not, it's Pine Hills. Pine Hills. All right. So that actually was added during the course of this year. That just rolls it forward into the next year's budget. the marching band, actually, because we rebid the contract, their cost for their functions and transportation has increased. They didn't really have a say in that, but we just need to adjust the budget for that. The STEM initiative, this is partly paid by grants, and this is just the general fund section. The EMAT teacher training program is a new program we actually started last summer to get current individuals to be trained as teachers, and hopefully that will help us moving forward in terms of filling positions. And then every year we always have some staff coming off from grants. We don't usually put 100% of them back. We try to pare those down. This year we're asking for 2.4 positions to come back. One FTE is not coming back at this point. So these items are considered essential items. If you add up slides 8 and 9, it's actually $1.6 million. It doesn't take long to add up the big numbers in a district the size of ours. So if we took the base budget, the first number slide you saw, and we added the mandates and what are considered to be essential items, this would bring us increased expenses to $9.2 million. If nothing else changed, and we know things will change as we go through the budget process, it would take either budget reductions, additional revenue, or some combination of a tax levy increase of 2.3%. And we never really we just throw these out there as benchmarks so people have some idea of where we are. But the tax levy is never decided until right at the very end in April, when the board sees the full package, all potential revenue sources, any additional state aid. That's the last thing that is basically set as we adopt the budget. There are also additional high priority items that support the academic plan, and certainly we'll go through as if there are questions on these, but there's a recommendation to reorganize the communications department, add some clerical support in the security office. Currently they actually have no clerical support. Transportation, the idea here would be to add 2 additional buses to the industry runs to shorten ride times overall. Also to give them some additional coverage with clerical support and for phone service. There's a lot of activity in that office, and there's currently 3 full-time people. Bus aides, I put this back on just because it was brought up by a board member at the last meeting. We didn't use these funds this year, and if this reduction was taken to help offset other increases in transportation costs in other areas. We still are holding about $50,000 as a contingency for additional aides if we need them. That only gets you a couple aides, or one and then another one part of a year. But there is some allowance in there already. Pre-K is just looking for a piece of equipment. The curriculum and instruction is looking for some additional clerical support. We've added 2.5 supervisors, so we need to add some additional clerical support to that area. So there's a total for this group in this slide of $459,500. There's also, a lot going on in technology, not just with what Mr. Baker just described, but the new student management system. And there's items in here as well. The first item is essentially just to catch up on our replacement cycle of our computer equipment. There's some web redesign where we would have the ability to do some outsourcing if we need to for aspects of that. That's a very large project. A small item for training and travel. Chromebooks. cost associated with some new platforms, licensing, etc. So the total on this slide is 205,000. Slides 11 and 12 combined are 664,500. So there are those items we need to carefully discuss, and these are, you have to understand, it's typical, and this year, I think the total requests from all the administrators were about $8 million. So what you're seeing here is what Cabinet deliberates for hours through a series of meetings to try to prioritize these, verify what's leading to these requests, and also consider that there's limits to what we can do in obviously any one budget cycle. So this is a small piece of all of the requests that came in. In addition to that, the academic plan, you see that you have that document separately. There's a spreadsheet, and there's also the narrative. There's 3 different options in the academic plan. We do this because it's usually difficult to implement everything we want to in 1 year. This is the 3rd year, I believe, of the phase-in, but we broke that down into 3 different options depending on, with 3 different price points or cost points, options A to C ranging from 1.6 million to 522,000. Should have had that up while I just said that, but okay. Look quickly. So if you put everything in here, the whole enchilada, this would be a big number. Expenses would grow by about $11.5 million. There'd be about a $4.9 million budget deficit that would have to be closed, and if nothing else happened and it translated to just a tax levy change, it would increase the tax levy by 4.31%. So, what would be very helpful to staff tonight, if the walkaway could be the green bar slides 6, 8, and 9. If we can go through those and at least bring closure to what items, and it may be most of those because they're mandates and essential items, which it might even be easier to do it by exception. What items do we want to talk about, potentially pull out? And then those would appear, whatever we agree remains, would appear into the next draft budget.
So, Mr. Hogan, the only thing I'm going to say about your suggestion is I think, based on conversations previously, that you're lumping together 2 different categories. So I'm going to ask you, for purposes of the conversation and to help direct the conversation for the board, are you defining mandate as that which the failure to provide that program or that support or that staff member would expose the district to a violation of state or federal law?
Or state education regulation.
Right, well, that's law too,
Or
law, statute,
some
or regulation. I'm not
combination,
trying
yeah.
to be jerky, I
Yeah.
just mean, so if the answer to the question that mandate is defined as exposing the district to liability for failure to comply with state statute or regulation or federal law or regulation, then I don't believe that the way to introduce that in that way, just for purposes of getting through this, is that the board can pick and choose removal of that from that category. So the slide number 6 is not the one that should be part of that discussion. It can
Okay.
be, we can have discussion about it, people can ask you questions, certainly, but the board shouldn't be picking and choosing from slide 6. Certainly they can do
Right.
that, but they have to understand, and that's why I'm introing it by having this very short conversation with you.
Right.
Mandate means exactly what it is. We are exposed to liability, and we must comply with federal and state law, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's, sorry, Vic.
Could I just?
we're going to narrow down it by slide. I think it's easier to get through, get through. So what I was going to suggest is not to remove the ability of the board to talk about the slide, but let's cordon it off. So if you want, let's start with a conversation. If anybody has questions about slide 6, which is the mandates, but understanding they are in fact mandates, and then we'll get to the other slide for which people can let you know their thoughts and feelings about them. So, Ms. Wilson, we're going to talk about slide 6 now, and do you have any questions or comments? No. Dr. Chator. I mean, even if your comment is, boy, I wish we didn't have these mandates and have to spend the money. Ms. Lang, Dr. Chator.
Like I said before, it's time to burn the incense. I did not know this.
Oh, you just want to be 15 minutes of fame has been extended,
I
Dr.
really did not
Chaudhary.
realize this quote is going to be so popular and I'm going to result in a gender reassignment.
So for anyone who's listening at home, I feel like calling out the people we know who listen to this, or anyone who's still here, thank you for listening to this, is Dr. Chaudhary has been quoted by Bethany Bump once in her tweeting about the last budget discussion about burning incense and the lack of state aid or the need for state aid, and basically pulling out the stops to pray for it in whatever way. And then it was actually the quote almost of the week in the Sunday Times Union as well. So that's why we joke with Dr. Chaudhary that he is now the most famous among us. Ms. Lang, anything about slide 6? Ms. Roach?
No.
Ms. Smith? No. Ms. Savage?
I'm sorry to ask a question
No,
about
God,
slide
no,
6.
no, please.
I know it's going to be late night, but I just would like to understand, as a percentage of our existing kindergarten TAs, how many is 10 new special ed TAs? It just seems like such a very, very large number to me, 10 TAs.
I would say they probably have 100 and let's say
At the kindergarten level, they have
oh, no,
10?
not the kindergarten level.
Dr. Wilson Turner
So for
will address
special ed,
that.
it's about what the configuration of the classroom has to be. So if it's, if I'm
So these
adding
are
a
all for
613,
self-contained
correct.
classrooms. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
And I have none. So there you go, Mr. Hogan. Revel
Yes.
in it. Slide 6 is over. Now
It
move
will
on to.
be embedded in the next draft, you see.
So everyone understands now our base budget has been increased by the additional 6 whatever millions, or
Could
the
I,
net of the.
could I propose that we continue labeling them as mandates? On when you do your slide like slide 7, you could just put mandates 0.9 or whatever it is, 9.4, 926, 800 before you get to the expenses, because it's important for everyone to understand that some of these expenses are increasing because of mandates. So that's helpful to keep it broken out but displayed. You don't need to display every line item, but to say that there are expenses include last year plus mandates.
I don't even think there's a problem in you're including the same slides for those who are coming to the meeting for the first time. But if you want to add a slide where you're just dealing with the numbers that we're working off of, would be something else. But this would be almost historical for those who are coming for the first time to a meeting and need to really understand, well, why are we at this increased number?
Right,
So-
and I can insert it right in front of the draft so that and then explain that it's in the
I
draft.
think we're
yeah.
now all at a place where we understand each other, so that's really good about sort of the need for some simplicity in being able to talk to the public and about this and to answer any questions that come down the pike. So now we are up to discussing the other essential items, correct?
Correct, slide 8.
When we start there, and I'll start now, we'll shift and start with Ms. Roach.
So I think, and this is sort of to steal or maybe question, to kind of flesh out Ms. Smith's question, was that the court liaison, if I understand it correctly, it's that the age at which you can drop out of school has increased from 16 to 17. Therefore, we need to keep track of all the 16-year-olds that don't show up for school because they don't have the option of just dropping out. So having somebody else, is that
Yes,
so my, can you, sorry, I was almost done. So my understanding was that the mandate is we have to check out for those, no, the mandate is 16-year-olds have to go to school, but we don't necessarily have to hire another person to check up on all those 16-year-olds. It's just more of a practical need to do that.
Yeah. So the mandatory age for schools for school-age children has changed from 16 to 17, and this will certainly have an impact on our attendance teachers and the core activity. And so the recommendation to hire a full-time court liaison is a result of increasing the number of 16-year-olds to 17-year-olds by 400 to 500 students from the adult system to the family court system into the juvenile system. So they're not all coming from incarceration, but it's also coming from raising the number of students entering into the district as opposed to incarceration and being allowed to drop out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So there is a mandate, but
The mandate is raise the age. The mandate is not the court liaison.
That's what I
Currently, we have an attendance teacher who is acting as that court liaison. However, with the chronic absenteeism requirement or mandate under ESSA, it will, severely impact the ability to address our attendance issues and the increase of 400 to 500 students as a result of raise the age.
So Bill, in terms of it making it easy to go around, do you want to go through, for each board member to go through the slides one at a time? Or do you want individual items gone over? How, I know that you often have a way that you'd like to be able
Right,
to note
it's probably the slide. If we discuss
Okay.
the slide and go around, and then at the conclusion of that, the question is, will any of these be pulled out?
Okay, great. Ms. Roach, anything more on, I'm going to do it this way. I know it entails then a lot of questions from everybody, but any other questions or comments that you want to make, anything you need answers to on slide 8 yet?
A brief comment. I really appreciate that we're calling O'Neill and not calling it by an acronym. And it makes it easier to understand what school we're talking about. Also, can we tell you, there's a brief reference to per mandates for the new ENL teacher position, and I wondered if you could just run over what that is. ENL teacher O'Neill per mandate.
Yeah, so that is the result of a mandate, CR Part 154, and the increase in the number of ENL students attending Edmund O'Neill Middle School.
So, God, this is so disorganized, and I apologize.
understand.
But since the reason that we increased the TAs in pre-K and the teachers are because of the mandated ratios, why, if this is a Part 154 mandate, is it being listed as another essential item? Like, do we have a choice? Do we have to have a full-time equivalent ENL teacher added to O'Neill, or we would be out of compliance with 154?
Yes. This is a result of an increase in the enrollment of our ENL students.
So, great.
Okay, hold
So,
on. If I could interrupt just for a
Sure.
second, because I think we're getting a little bit off. In our minds, as far as the district, it is a mandate. But let me kind of separate that a little bit. What the mandate is the service. We have to accomplish a task. In order to accomplish the task, we as the district see that we have a need for these positions. So for example, if it is a requirement that we have to do a certain task, in order to accomplish that task, then we have to have that position. And so I'm going to ask for a little clarification from Lori. Does the mandate specifically call for a position, or does it call for the service?
maybe I can.
And I know
I
it's
feel like
hard
that's a trick question.
for us to separate, and that's what I'm saying. In our minds, if it's the service, in our minds as a district, the district employees, if a service is required, then it is required for us to have a position.
Can I give an example?
Yeah.
So let me give you an example, because we had this conversation earlier today, the
understand.
three of us, to be able, and that's why court liaison moved from the mandate slide into this slide. And that's why I asked Bill the question I did. And that's because it's just important as a board for us to know what is mandated, meaning what we would be sanctioned for noncompliance if we did. So if it's if there's the ratio for pre-K, the example is here. We believe that having 50 students in a class, in a Regents level class at the high school, would be counterproductive to the academic outcomes for children in that class. So we, in a sense, think it is not an option at all that we have that class be smaller. That's not mandated, though. We could be absolutely negligent and just decide to have classes way too large for our population, or we could decide, but we can't do that when it comes to, as we know, the pre-Ks, for which the state mandates a ratio of teacher to student. So when it comes to the ENL teacher, is this something where if we did not have the 1.0 FTE on the ENL teacher, which is listed on slide 8, in the budget, we would have somebody else able to provide whatever service that person was doing, even if that person had to get a stipend, or if the classes were bigger sizes, or we had to pull somebody from somewhere else. And I'm not looking to do that. I'm not looking to be a Poindexter, but I'm looking to put things in the slides where they need to go, because if the bottom falls out, let's say, and we have no state aid, we need to know what's mandated, and we need to know what we think is really important for the safety, security, and academic outcomes of our students and for our staff.
So
but
we would
may
be
not
out,
be mandated.
right. So we would be out of compliance if we did not add another ENL teacher at Edmond O'Neill.
Like I said, there's no right answer, there's only the answer, so we know where to put it in case, God forbid, the floor fill. So then all we need to do is just move it to the other slide. And like I said, this helps the board, and because we've talked about it in various ways, understand what's non-negotiable as opposed to what we believe should be non-negotiable, because we're trying to educate students in the best way possible. And unfortunately, we don't have 100% foundation aid, so not everybody agrees with us. So I'm sorry to interrupt in that way, but we're now going to go to Ms. Lang for a discussion of slide 8, and I apologize for interrupting. But we're going to have removed ENL from that.
But I just want to talk about ENL for a quick second, but that's fine.
ENL's going to slide 6. It's a mandate.
For the ENL teacher, those students that would be receiving services, is there a reason why they're not opting to go into the International Center, if that's the age
So
of those
I think that's a
students?
great question, but remember, if we're trying to just get through the slides, but if that's a short answer, I'm not going to stop it. It's just, let's try to get through the slides and what what our comments are on that.
You're glad I asked that.
Well, I bet the superintendent can.
Ms. McKenna.
So not all students qualify for the AIC, and remember, it's an optional program, so students can opt, parents can opt their child out of attending AIC. So it's a twofold answer.
But thank you very much. And now, when we're looking at slide 8, again, just remember that is missing. Otherwise, all the comments or questions you have about it, go for it.
For the secondary O'Neill teachers, the 7th grade team, is that because enrollment went up into that and we have the capacity and we're not over capacity in that building? How are the numbers of capacity there?
So
Go ahead, Ms.
So
McKenna.
currently, we have 2 6th grade teams, 1 7th grade team, and 1 8th grade team. Next year, we will have 2 6th grade teams, 2 7th grade teams, and 1 8th grade team. So we're increasing the number of teams that we are having at the 7th grade level by 1. And the following year, it will be another 8th grade team, so we'll have 2, 2, and 2.
And so to address the enrollment concern, Member Lang, we are at 441 students, give or take. We have the capacity for about 600.
Can I just suggest the question about capacity about O'Neill just comes down to a number that's on the configuration report. The grade configuration report lists the capacity of O'Neill at 350. If you're saying it's 600, it's an error on the grade configuration report that we get monthly. So that's where this question keeps coming from. Every month we get a report, the grade configuration report, and the January one, like all the others, says building capacity for O'Neill is 350. And that's where the question keeps popping up.
So I did a little bit of research on this capacity question, and when you go back and you look at former presentations on Edmond O'Neill and the capacity for the first year, it does state 350 students, but the maximum capacity for Edmond O'Neill is 600. So for the 17-18 school year, it's 350.
But the building capacity is still the building capacity, right? The building could hold 600 students?
Yes.
Maybe I'm totally misunderstanding this, but I have always interpreted the building capacity number on the gradation report to be the entire capacity of the building. And it says 350, and it doesn't say 600, and that's where the question keeps coming from.
We'll correct that. It's a mistake.
Thank you. I'm glad we finally solved this. Anything more on slide 8? Jen? Oh, Dr. Chatur, slide 8.
Just one question about New Scotland. We're losing a section because it's lower enrollment.
It's actually, we've always struggled with that because at one point it was going toward a 4 deep school, meaning there's 4 first grades, 4 second grades. It can't be 4 deep. So it really should be 3 deep, and this will put it, kind of right size it back.
Ms. Wilson?
My only question, since we've operationalized the term mandated versus essential, is about the registered nurse. And you alluded to that it's for physicals and things of that nature, so I anticipate that you've exhausted all the ideas concerning maybe double using or allocating someone else or anything of that nature.
Dr. Wilson Turner?
So there are 2 different references to mandated nursing, or to nursing services, one of which is mandated for 2 new private schools that will be opening in our area that we are responsible to provide nursing services for. That's the mandate. The other nursing is on the enrollment-driven request, and that's to support the volume of physicals at the high school.
Let's see, Ms. Smith.
Yes, thank you. I think I wanted to just follow up on Ms. Wilson's question. So let's say with the exception, the E&L, and we said we'd move the court piece? No, we didn't. Okay. So these
Court's in the right place
Court's in the right
here,
place.
but E&L is going to be moving to the
To the
mandate
other.
to slide 6.
and the nursing piece.
The nurse is actually when I say optional, I don't mean that it's optional. We're back again to the fact that she's capacity.
Okay.
So it's just, it would be better if we actually had less, taxing the nurse less in terms of what she or he has to.
So I guess my
accomplish.
question is back to one that Ms. Wilson asked. If we did not fund these positions, do we have alternative plans? I mean, these are not mandates. I will respond to that. So it's a little bit more complicated than just saying a yes or a no. What would end up happening is that roles and responsibilities would have to be redefined, and it would absolutely put a hardship on people that we have in place now, much like the example that Ms. McKenna gave with regard to the court liaison. We have the service that we have to fulfill. And so it would put us in a hardship to fulfill those responsibilities. That's probably the best way that I could answer that. Is there a distinct plan B? Not at this time.
Ms. Savage.
So I have 2 questions, both of which are really extensions of questions that came before. O'Neill, help me understand why we're adding, where the kids that are coming from that we'll be adding. I've kind of lost a thread here somewhere.
Yeah, so the current 6th grade students will roll up to 7th grade. We have 2 teams of 6th grade. They'll roll up to 7th grade.
I see. So what's really happening,
Then
let me
the
just
theater
shortcut you, is that
theater-
we're rolling out the old Writer Choice middle school kids who are small numbers because they're,
Right.
it's the tail end of them.
Exactly,
Okay.
yes.
Got that, thank you. And then secondly, about New Scotland Elementary, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Lori, I just figured, I got it, let's cut to the chase. New Scotland Elementary, we tried, I believe, the year before last, or maybe the year before that, to drop their kindergarten down to 3. and then they popped back up to 4 because there's a lot of kids in that neighborhood. So I thought I asked this question, but I don't see it anywhere in the answer. So maybe I failed to actually ask the question. Do we have any evidence that we actually can get away with 3 kindergartens at New Scotland? Or are we going to go right down the path? And let me just ask the other question, which is, what's going to happen on September 7th next year when suddenly, oh, look, we have an extra 15 kids at New Scotland that we weren't expecting?
Well, what's going to happen is we're supposed to monitor enrollment so that when we get to our capacity at New Scotland for 3 deep sections, New Scotland closes. And then families do not have access to their neighborhood school. And so that got way ahead of us somehow this year, and we were forced to open a 4th section of New Scotland Elementary Kindergarten, where we've been making an effort to try to right-size New Scotland, as Bill said, for the last 4 or 5 years. So they have 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade were 4 deep at one point. 5th grade is now finally rolling out their 4 deep, and the goal was to be done. But now we're starting all over again, and we're going to have this bubble roll through New Scotland Elementary School again. So it's really about very closely monitoring the enrollment and then having difficult conversations when parents can't access kindergarten at New Scotland because there's only 3 sections of it.
And is every child enrolled at New Scotland right now in kindergarten, do they live in the catchment area?
Yes.
Okay.
At least they started the school year that way.
Right, I understand. Okay, so this is a real decision that's got real impacts on real people who purchased a house in the New Scotland catchment zone, maybe live next door to New Scotland, and are going to not realize that this has consequences for them. So whatever we decide about this, it's not a simple decision, because it's not just that we don't need this teacher. It's that, because, right, you don't have any reason to think that we don't need them.
We don't need that teacher right now simply because the 5th grade 4 deep section is graduating, and my next year's 5th grade will not need 3 teachers. When I go to do enrollment for kindergarten in a few months, well, I won't be here, but in a few months when we go to do kindergarten enrollment, we'll have a sense of how many students we're just rolling over from our pre-K programs, and if I will get to 3 deep sections there before I even begin enrollment in July and August.
So if we're only dropping 1 teacher out of New Scotland, aren't we dropping a 5th grade teacher from New Scotland?
Not necessarily. It depends on a retirement.
I don't mean the actual human being, but in terms of the staff line, or shouldn't, if you're going to do kindergarten at 3 and 5th grade is going to have 1 less?
The current kindergarten that's 4 is going to roll up.
So first, before I just mention a comment on the slide, I just want to say that, it is a bigger conversation. And so whether the board decides to wait until after budget season, and you're right, the bigger conversation is, as Dr. Wilson-Turner says, year after year, there's been a discussion over the space in the building, whether it was 2011 and there weren't enough cubbies for kindergartners because we just kept taking, and I really understand the sensitivity to people moving in an area and thinking their children are going to go there. But the board's going to have to bite the bullet and address the situation rather than having it, I think, my opinion, change year to year. So either there has to be, we're just going to not hold the line and figure out how to cram kids into the school, or we're going to say, well, people move into the area expecting that, so we are going to continue to have it whatever deep and then figure out. So again, this is not something probably we should talk about now, but it should be probably, since grade configuration and the district and buildings and all of that is on the plate, might as well just address some of the and Dr. Wilson-Turner will be on maternity leave, but the issue, I think, unless you're, Seth, just one quick question. Other than New Scotland, because we're talking about that coming up to be talked about, are there other hot school size
Eagle
issues?
Point.
Eagle Point, okay. And that's important to know, because I think it's, to the extent the board is very big talking about systems and things going in place, I think that there should be that kind of conversation as to what to do.
The only difference is Eagle Point legitimately has nowhere else to put a classroom to add, to a section. There's just no way. And
Right,
so it's
we
something
talked about
we
that.
have
They
to
didn't even have a
monitor
room like for art
Art
or
or
music
music
or
or
whatever. And
anything.
this has been,
Yep.
again, ongoing for almost my entire
Correct.
time on the board when we needed TAs. Right, so I think, again, when the budget is done, that the district, the board should probably do the hard conversation of figuring out the concept of right-sizing buildings and at what point that, and how to address it is for the board to decide, so that staff knows how to deal with it, because otherwise we look like fits and starts. We're closing it, we're opening it. How did they get in? So again, policy systems, and it'll be looked at. Slide 8. So Bill, I don't have any questions for you or Stephanie, because you've made it clear that these are items considered essential, and I guess from the way they flow in the slides, they are considered more important in terms of the money allocation than when we get to the enhanced academic plan. Is that a correct conclusion?
These are these are the highest priority following the mandates, because
okay.
these are enrollment driven to
okay,
continue the level of services.
All right, and because they are broken up and not totaled with slide 9, is it correct to then conclude that slide 8 is of higher priority than slide 9?
No, they were just simply broken up, and the total for both slides is on slide 9.
Okay, so you did add that line. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I wish they were
all
together
we
in
did is
small
we
font.
took all of these items were together on one slide last time we saw you. All we did is break them out to enrollment driven versus non-enrollment driven.
So the grand total for 8 and 9 are basically 1.6 million.
Yes.
So then I think for me, slide 9 is very self-explanatory, and I don't have any questions about that for slide 8. I have questions on 9, so I'll wait until we come back around to me on that. Ms. Wilson, slide 9.
The STEM initiative is my first question, and my question around that was whether that was outlined in detail in the academic plan, the part that pertains to like the typing and things of that nature. That was my part 1 of that question.
Typing.
Repeat your question,
On
please.
slide
Sure.
9.
We're on slide 9 talking about the STEM initiative, and when I was reading the enhanced academic plan, they talked about like computer TAs for keyboarding skills and things of that nature. Was that sort of like a subheading of that?
Karen?
Yes, that will be addressed in our academic plan presentation, which is coming up as soon as Bill is done. Okay.
Okay. And outside of that, just going back to the presentation, everything else, like Sue alluded to, is kind of self-explanatory. I understand the hall monitors. You must have measured from last year to this year that you have a need or a deficit of 3. So I interpret it that way. And I think that was it. So I'm good. Thank you.
Dr. Chatur?
Coming back to STEM, is that the flying classroom that we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. So is that number right? 28,000?
That is the general fund portion. It costs around 58,000 in total. There's 5 or 6 schools, but the rest of it is being paid through either grants or community schools.
So my follow-up question to that is, we rolled it out on a few schools. So is this to keep it in those same schools, or is it to expand it to the other schools that don't have it yet?
This is to keep it in the same schools and then look to expand down the line. Not this year, though. Not
So
this year.
This money only
So-
covers maintenance of the existing schools.
That is correct.
Correct.
So right, I guess that's my question. So.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Karen Bechtel?
That is true for this particular initiative under STEM, but I think your bigger question is what kind of STEM things are we doing? So, for example, currently, right now, the 5th grade is attending MySci yearly, with the teachers getting professional development and bringing. It's just not a field trip. It's actually a sustained kind of thing that's happening in the classroom. We also just hired an elementary STEM supervisor who is so engaged in expanding and bringing things that don't necessarily cost this kind of money, but other things that we can do as a part of the academic program, because she will be able to devote her time and energy on ensuring that those things are occurring. So I don't want anybody to walk away that this is all we're doing, because we are doing a lot.
The reason this shows up here as essential to programming is that it's a new program that was started this year, and unless we fund it here, it's not a mandate, it's not required, but there would be a fall off of that programming if we didn't add it in here as an essential item to continue programming.
Right, so I want to expand a little bit more. Is that to continue a program that started mid-year that needs to finish with the schools, or is this the same 5 schools will be getting the flying classroom and it'll be different? Do you know what I mean? Because if it's a new program for the year, I'd like to see it to different schools except Toast, which I think should really always have that focus. But if you're just saying, you know, I don't remember all the same schools, but those 3 schools are going to get it again and the other schools are not, I'd like that fleshed out a bit.
So what we're looking at doing is maintaining what we have in place. And so this is a portion of to help us maintain what we have in place, and then to build the capacity so that we can expand to other schools. So it piggybacks on what Karen was talking about, in that while it is to maintain and to help those schools continue to move forward, it's not the end all and the be all, because we are building that capacity so that we can engage other schools.
No, also, Superintendent, if you could just speak to why you didn't include the name in it, and you called it a STEM initiative. And it wasn't to sort of, just explain it.
The name of Flying Classroom is the actual name of the company. And so in our budget, we're not trying to advertise for a company. We wanted to align it with the correct place where it really belongs, which is in the STEM initiative, so that it's not promoting one company over another. And so that's why you see the change to STEM initiatives.
I understand, but do you understand what I'm saying?
I
as
do.
well? Thank you.
I do.
Ms. Roach?
Okay, I just had a couple of questions about our slides on page 9 to run down. The first question is interscholastic entry fees / dues. Is that athletic?
Correct.
Is it new sports, increased entry fees?
I believe.
We don't know, that's okay.
I think it is.
So yes, entry fees have gone up. They are increasing from this year to next year. And we've also added, I believe it was 6 different sports teams over the course of the last couple of years. So with the increase in the number of athletic teams, sport teams that we've added, the entry fees and dues have increased over time.
And then the next question is, can someone go over the data and technology that's on this slide? Because I know there's some more data and technology needs that are listed as additional high priority.
Yep.
On 11. So what is the $64,000?
This one is primarily to reinstate our Microsoft support contract that was made aware this year in an unfortunate manner that we no longer have an active support contract for enterprise licensing, and it's a critically important service to have, and I'd like to reinstate it for the upcoming year.
Okay. That's probably going to save us money in the long run.
Correct.
That's it for
Ms.
that
Smith?
page. It's Pine Hills.
Okay, so yes, just if anybody heard, Vicki had said this much earlier, but we didn't point it out, that is actually the Pine Hills.
Right, I got
Okay,
that, yeah,
all right.
thanks.
Ms. Savage?
I'm going to hold any further questions on this slide till we get closer to reality. As you all know, I have a frustration with trying to discuss whether things are a good idea or a bad idea in a hypothetical environment when we don't know what our state aid is. So there are some things on here that I would question if in fact money is very, very tight. If money is not tight, then I'm fine. So I'm not going to raise those things now because we'll know before decisions have to be made. So this is slide 6 or slide 8, so I think I'm okay in saying to you, I might need to come back to this later.
Right, and I think that's expected as we go through, we're moving through the process, we're building it as we go along, and if we get some surprises at the end, or we want to readjust at the end, we certainly have the historical documents to say, well, let's start with the things, reevaluate that we added. So,
I thought,
oh, go ahead.
I just thought, I didn't think we were thumbs up, thumbs downing this slide, but just more going, hey, if we wanted to know what this was, just acquainting ourselves with what these line items were about.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, for me, the question is, it comes back to this question of equity and school size. And I still continue from my position where I see a very small school. I know that the principals will not agree with me, but that very, very small schools do not need the administrative support that very large elementary schools do. And so I want to keep that in mind as we're going forward. I would always choose a teacher over an assistant principal at a small elementary school. And New Scotland is not a small elementary, nor is Pine Hills, but we do have some small elementary schools who used to share staff and now have individual staff. And if push comes to shove, I'd rather have teachers.
So my question about slide 9 has to do with the EMAT teacher training. So I have a series of questions, but they're all about that. So the $337,400, is that for, how my cohorts is that for?
That, I have it.
Oh, I'm just going to
It's actually it's a budget for 7 staff. The program is 15 staff, but the way the program currently works is those people stay on salary while they're through the program, a limited number of them, and then we backfill them. So we're going to look at this number. It's currently 7, but we're already looking at the next cohort. It may be able to be lowered to 5, depending on who enrolls. So we may be able to actually adjust this downward a bit.
So actually, that was my question. So it wasn't, that was my third question. So then my second question, to make sure I understand how this works, is we had our first cohort, and of that cohort, the staff that we've had to then backfill on and continue to pay works to a $337,400 annually. But we already, did we not already have a second cohort? Or that's the one that was
Not yet.
just
That's the
done
one
in
that was
this
just
fall?
advertised.
Okay.
Second cohort will be in 2018-19.
Okay. Now, the second cohort, will the first cohort be off the rolls by then?
That's my understanding.
So we're not, so that's my
One-year
question. Is
program.
there an overlap ever in terms of our covering costs for cohort 1 and cohort 2 so that this number actually doubles or is up 50%?
So there will be two things could happen. One, we hire them as permanent teachers, or 2, they go back into their prior position before they entered into the EMAT program, so we would never have an overlap between cohort 1 and cohort 2.
So then, is there, in a sense, a ceiling on the amount of extra money we have to spend? And the reason I say that is that as we go towards cohort 2 now, which then now I guess I have even more questions, did we sign on with NYU Steinhardt where we are contractually committed to have a certain number of cohorts to be part of the program?
Two
Okay,
cohorts.
so our obligation,
one more year.
Okay, so the second cohort is something we're contractually obligated to do. I got it. So then my questions are almost irrelevant. You know where I'm going, because my concern is there a ceiling? If there's not a ceiling and this number goes up, then I understand that we're doing this for training and to sort of grow our own, but this is a very large number, and so it's very striking when one looks at it, and wondering, of course, as I look at it, have we reached the maximum amount that we would be seeing on a line, on a line or not? So I think I have an idea about it. I understand that it's a 2-year commitment, and
It's 2 years? I thought it was 1 year.
no,
No,
so
we
it's
committed to NYU for 2 years.
No, we're talking cohort, meaning we are contractually obligated to have a second cohort. Right. do we have an idea yet on our, no, that's a separate issue. I'm not going to go into that. Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, going around to, does anybody have any more questions for slides 8 or 9? Ms. Abbott?
I just realized I didn't understand something about the EMAT thing when you asked the question. This year, we have 7 people in the cohort?
This year, we have
No.
15 people in the
15.
cohort. Out of the 15, 7 of those resident interns
Yeah.
were in district positions during the 16-17 school year. So we had to backfill those positions, which is why and maintain their salary and benefits as they're going through the EMAT program.
But we didn't budget for that last year because it hadn't been implemented. I'm just trying, because this, that's why this is a net change, is because we didn't
Correct.
budget for it last year, even though we
It
expensed it last
started in the
year.
summer after the budget was passed.
Okay, so if nobody else has any questions about slides 8 or 9, Mr. Hogan, Ms. Primero, do you need anything from us now that we've gone through questions and comments that, for slides 8 and 9?
Well, just in closing on those, the plan would be that slides 8 and 9 in the mandates are folded into one complete draft budget, and then we give you the 12 pages of line item. We've got to build a budget.
No, I
and keep
understand
it
you saw my
moving.
face when you were
Yes.
saying that. So
Yeah.
I'm not, so again, I shouldn't be starting with me, but I will
Yeah.
speak to it. I'm not comfortable, I mean, you can fold in what you want to get a number and create a new slide. That's
Right.
not a problem. But for me, I'm not comfortable if folding means 8 and 9 go away from what we see, because we, as Ann said, don't really know the money we're working with yet, and we may have to sit here and agonize about 2 slides and lines and saying, and then somebody might say, well, on that academic plan, I know that that's not a priority for you, but it seems to be,
Right.
you know, what our mission is and what our goals are for the year. So it just seems like collapsing them, I want to make sure we don't get in 2 weeks at the next board meeting that we're going to still see the slides we're seeing now, even if you add summary slides that make it easier for your work, but maybe for our work, we continue to see the uncollapsed slides with the lines and the money and the descriptions in there. Does that make sense? And can I get a nod if anybody else has that desire?
I'm
not
just
gonna
going to
work.
suggest that,
Yeah, it's not, we've got to work, we have a budget, and every single day, things occur that change the 18-19 budget. We've got to have a document that we can actually, every day, make changes to.
so I think that what we're saying, which I actually think is not as bad as you think it is, we'll see, is that, yes, include 6, 8, and 9 in the document you're using as your everyday document. However, when you show it to us, keep these 6, 8, and 9, you can put them at the back, right?
Right. I
But so
mean,
that when you show us, I know this is your favorite slide 7 or slide 10, where you
Right.
show revenues versus expenses. It's okay to include 6, 8, and 9, all items on 6, 8, and 9 in there, as long as 6, 8, and 9 are still in the way back.
displayed somewhere.
So that when when push comes to shove and the assembly finally does what the
Right.
assembly does, we can go back.
And everything's here. I mean, it's all on board docs.
No,
It's
I
not
know it's on
leaving.
board docs. What
Right.
I'm saying is that, again, you do whatever you need to
Right.
do your job.
Right.
But when you come back in a budget presentation in 2 weeks on March 1st,
Show
these slides still need to be here, because that's the only way that we can actually understand what we are considering approving or
Right.
considering not approving. Because we're not just considering, as you know, from our vantage point as not being the people who do the work daily, we're actually considering approving things, FTEs, programs. It's
Right.
not, we can't really wrap around, well, I'm approving 5.2 million, or I'm approving 6.2.
So,
We need the
President
number,
Adler?
but we need the breakout, yeah.
I
If I
overheard
may.
Ms. Adams.
Oh, I'm sorry. If I may, President Adler, members of the board, if it would be pleasing to the board, what we could do is attach those slides as an appendix as we move forward. So we pulled them and then just have them as an appendix at the end of the PowerPoint presentation so that they're always visible for you to reference.
Ms. Wilson?
Not to beat the horse, but yes, Could it be potentially even a table so we can see it where Sue alluded to as one document, just stack them essentially, and parse out the information that we asked about, like this, where we talked about the scholastic fee and you have like an asterisk at the bottom, because we're using it as a working document and then you need your working document.
Right. What I would hope I can come back with is the first slide you will see next time is something like slide 10 that says draft 2. And then from that, we will show you a lot of changes that have occurred since these were issued. We always and reconcile forward, and then show you all the new priorities you're still considering. And then these, I do think it's best a suggestion that these can be an appendix or a separate sheet that's really a reference if we ever want to go back to. We can always pull things out later. It's a lot easier to pull 1 or 2 things out than try to run 2 or 3 different budget documents simultaneously and keep everything reconciled. That'll drive us crazy.
And again, I don't care whether it's appendix, I don't
Yeah.
care what it's called, and I don't care where it is, so long as it's in our hands
Yeah, okay.
conceptually
That
on
we
the
can do.
computer. And again, when you say it's hard to pull these budget documents together, you and Stephanie should be doing whatever you need with whatever documents you need moving forward.
Right.
But it's just that we need to know what makes that up, because it's not something that we're going to have the recall of and just be able to see it.
Right.
And I guess the real issue is in our heads, what we're doing is base budget plus mandates plus the other ones to get to this big number. So then if things are changing in those sub-documents, and then we go back later and say, well, you know what, we want to save $100,000 by eliminating this, and you say, oh, but I already so that $100,000 doesn't exist anymore. That's when we get to a point where we don't understand what's happening and we get frustrated.
If these are all in here and you say you want to pull 1 item or 2 items off from the mandates or essentials 3 weeks from now or 4 weeks from now, it's very easy to go get those, take them out, and reduce the budget. That'll be easy.
So here's, I don't know if this is what Ann's talking about, but it seems similar to me, but I could be wrong. I'm confused in your, I mean, I agree with her, and I'm glad with your answer, but you also said something about that was difficult, that I don't really understand. You said something like, well, things are changing every day, or we're pulling things out, not the pulling that, the changing every day. It sounds like the things changing every day, you're not talking about slides 6, 8, and 9 though, right?
No.
Okay, that's what threw me off. Thank you. Okay.
Right, and what happens is tomorrow, if there's a staff change, that may be a $20,000 adjustment. Now, we give you those, you'll see, and we've always given you these. We'll say, we've made these 5 adjustments that have nothing to do with these slides, that just because of things that happened every day.
Right, they may fit into the categories to which the slide applied, so you'll take us through that exercise. Like, let's say something,
Can I give you a prime
oh,
example?
please.
The first draft, our TRS rate was 11%. We've gotten clarification that it is now 10.63%. So it's being reduced, and that essentially is a $300,000 number. So that will be shown in the second draft, but that's what, without knowing what's on these slides, I can't move forward to tell you if it's really a $300,000 number or if it's only going to be a $50,000 number, because I don't have all these numbers in there. So that's
Good.
what
I
we
think
say by daily
I think we've
changes.
reached a
Okay.
good understanding, so, good job.
And I'll wrap this up because there's another presentation. But the yellow items here, slides 11 and 12, just be thinking about those because these are just laid out here. And as a board, we're going to have to probably come back and prioritize these because they're just listed. And as we keep going and the next phases, these priority items in the academic plan, we're realistically probably not going to fit everything in. So we'll be revisiting these and be asking for some input on how we might prioritize slides 11 and 12, and then talk about the academic plan priorities as well.
So I'm just going to make one comment on slide 11, and that is that when I look at the enhanced academic plan, I actually do see operational items. So you're breaking them out and creating slide 11. does that, like with the other slides, mean that you think slide 11 is higher priority than the academic plan? Or is it of the same?
I think it's of the same. The only reason these were broken out is because when these came in to us and when we identified these needs and prioritized them from all the wants of all the other staff, they weren't specifically, for the most part, laid out as part of the academic plan. The academic plan had the 5 themes, and there was a narrative and how that, it wasn't an exact fit, but as we're looking at this even again today, it's possible some of these could roll in.
Can I make a suggestion then? Okay, and the rest of the board can nod or shake their heads or comment on it. So for me, when you read the academic plan, it is not all direct instruction. It is all of the components that go into creating what is necessary to have a plan to provide the best academics possible, to have the best academic outcomes for our students. And we have often talked, when we talked about the high school rebuild, that a falling down building with bad HVAC and no windows with natural sunlight have been proven through studies, research, to not be conducive and can have a deleterious impact on the academic learning environment. So one could argue that having windows to the outside and not all internal classrooms doesn't seem like an academic plan issue, but in a sense, it's all funneling into the academics. So if slide 11 is not of a different priority than those things in the academic plan, and the academic plan has hall monitors, and I can't recall it because then I'd have to click on something else right now again. But on the academic plan, I know I looked at it this morning or this afternoon and saw things that I think convincingly argue are more operational. I would think that in the next 2 weeks, if you could put together the academic plan, even if you have to create another theme that's labeled operations because you think it's more operational, that if they're all of the same priority, please put them in the same document and then use your highlighting. And I see Ann nodding, which is good enough for me. That's good enough for all 7. That honestly, that allows us to understand that you are prioritizing them all the same, and where you're not, you're giving us A, B, or C, or you're using your highlighter, because otherwise I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, so does this, I mean, and again, somebody would say typist, but I go back to discussions this board has had. If you do not have somebody doing the actual clerical work of a department, then the department can't function, and if the department can't function, it can't do the work it needs to either do direct instruction or to support the direct instruction by creating a safe environment. So I don't, and I also think when we talked about front office, and Ms. Savage spoke so well about it, that we forget that that every person in our system contributes to the improved academic outcomes, from somebody who is doing custodial work to somebody who's greeting people at the door to somebody who's doing registration to somebody who's teaching. And so if we do believe that, and we believe they are all part of that, and that's why we started training hall monitors, then let's put it all in an academic plan, because it's clearly something you're prioritizing the same way. And if there are different priorities, create a different table.
I think that's a good idea.
Thank you.
That we can do that, so I think, we're good. That's enough of me. And we'll bring on the instructional team to do the academic plan, which will be modified the next time you see it with these other things. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Well, here's the brain team. Welcome.
Okay, back again. Should we discuss? No.
You want to just ask? You want to just go for questions? You don't have a
No,
presentation.
no, no.
Oh, you have a
we do.
presentation?
It's very
Oh, okay.
short.
All right.
I was trying. It's getting late. I was trying to be funny. I was going to try to revisit the calendar. I've already created like 5, 6 versions for you to consider.
Of course you have,
at
Karen.
some future time. So anyway, we'll carry on. So I love the idea that you mentioned about the organizational pieces, because those items on that slide, we did agree that they are in the same sort of priority list. It's just they were different. So we will create a third theme and call that, sort of operational support. And it does fit very nicely, and then it can fall into the budget sheet, and it'll look beautiful and concise. So we really like the format and the platform of the academic plan for this work. It helps us frame it, and we are in the 3rd year of doing it. So our process was to have the principals and other administrators develop their preliminary budget documents, and then we analyzed that data at the cabinet level, put it in a spreadsheet, really looked through, sorted things out. And again, the trends that we expected emerged. We did speak to the principals at this last principal meeting, which was last week, and Bill gave initial sort of budget presentation to them so that they were aware of where we are in the process, because we want to keep them in the loop and apprised of what we're doing. So the academic plan then is then identified, as I said, because the trends emerge, and we start going. And as I said, there's no surprises. The themes are not changed, are unchanged, except for the first one, because as you know, our first one, we were really very focused on P2 literacy. We have not abandoned in any way, shape, or form P2 literacy. We are in year 2 of our initiative. We have put the supports in place to engage in work that we really believe will get us the lift that we are looking for. Cecily and I are monitoring the data, and we will be reporting on that at the mid-year academic data point. But it's sustained. We have what we need to keep it going. We're carrying on. So we decided that we needed to sort of broaden that category to encompass the P12 instructional program, and really it is primarily around math. And we have known that this was a concern, but we needed to get the literacy model up, running, and moving in the way that we needed it to move. So you will see that. Secondly, our social emotional needs, which continue to be an area that we will focus on here in the district. College and career readiness, to ensure that all students have access to college. Administrative support for instructional leadership. We want to make sure that our leaders can be those instructional folks in their building to lead the program. And then safety and security is an ongoing theme. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues.
So in the instructional program, we have the final year of our pre-K incremental increase, which will move our UPK programs to the same per pupil allocation as our EPK programs. And this will allow us to more easily adjust for our 3- and 4-year-old numbers. So if you remember this year, we've done a lot of contract addendums to make adjustments for there being more 3-year-old interest than 4-year-old interest, and this will allow us to be able to do that more seamlessly, as well as provide a more comprehensive program. The elementary math coach, we are proposing to add 3 math coaches to our existing 5 for a total of 8 math coaches, so that we can begin to build the math coach model that replicates our ELA model to support math instruction by creating 4 whole math coach positions in a building where they're able to stay full-time and provide both academic support for students and coaching and development support for teachers. And then the other goal is to make sure that none of our coaches have more than 2 buildings that they're supporting. Currently, some of them support 3, ending up with a day and a half here, there, and everywhere, and not being as efficient and as effective as we would like to. And I'll just skip down to the elementary PD plan. The other thing that we are really invested in doing, I think as you look through our different versions of the academic plan budget, A, B, and C, you'll notice that this one pretty much stays consistent in terms of our support, and that's the elementary professional development plan. I've done 10 DTSDE reviews to date, and the theme across those reviews is that the elementary teachers are very grateful for having a new curriculum that has the scope and sequence and everything that they need in it, but they are not comfortable or feeling as well versed as they would like in those resources to deliver instruction effectively, and they need targeted professional development at their grade level in order to feel successful in the delivery of that instruction. And so we're committed to providing time for them each month at their grade level to receive the appropriate professional development.
So secondary middle school math coach. At the middle school level, we currently have one math coach that services three of our middle schools, the three middle schools and Tony Clement Center. In contrast, there are two literacy coaches assigned to the middle school level. So what we're asking to do through the budget process is to add an additional math coach, which will allow for greater support to teachers in the classroom, as well as during the teaming and data teaming process and common planning time. The secondary special ed education coach, in the 16-17 school year, we hired an elementary instructional coach designated specifically to special education. And this coach provides support to self-contained special education teachers as well as those who work in the integrated classrooms. The coach at the elementary level provides training, resource support, embedded professional development, assistance with the IEP implementations and support, and team planning for the special education program. We've seen the impact and the value in that elementary special education coach in those classrooms, and we are proposing to copy that model from the elementary into the secondary by adding a secondary special education coach to provide that same level of support to special education at our three middle schools, our high school, and Tony Clements. Still me. Okay. Social emotional to provide district and building level support. There are, right now, we have, 2 years ago, the district began to phase in a structure for a suite of emotional support in every building, and each year the levels of professional support have increased in order to support the model at the building level. At the elementary level, there's a district-wide behavior specialist as well as a psychologist that leads the district initiatives around and professional development and push-in support to colleagues at the building level to support response to intervention at the for the academic side and response to intervention at on the behavioral side. Again, we've seen the value and the impact that the RTI model has had at the elementary level, and we're looking to support that same model for the secondary level, which is a gap currently. So the psychologist and the for the behavior specialist side and the RTI coordinator would actually support the secondary level in the high school, but it does not have an impact on the general fund budget at this point in time. So if you look at the academic plan, there's actually a zero net cost to the district at this point in time because we have two line items. 2 lines in our budget currently open. Court liaison, we had a discussion on this already. This is really, it's not a mandated position, but it's to support the Raise the Age mandate from age 16 to 17 that will address the 400 to 500 students that are currently in the adult system shifting into the juvenile system. And again, not all of those students are coming from incarceration, but also raising the number of students entering into the district as opposed to incarceration and being allowed to just drop out. The school resource officer, Cecily mentioned earlier that she felt strongly about the elementary professional development plan, and therefore it was in option A, B, and C. We feel strongly about the school resource officer and ensuring that students at Edmond O'Neill have the high social emotional support that the other 2 middle schools are provided. And one of those resources that the other 2 middle schools are provided is through having an SRO full-time at those two middle schools. And that SRO would provide an added layer of support to students on site and help to ensure that students are safe at school and in the neighborhood beyond as they walk to and from school. Again, it would provide equity across all three of our middle schools. Again, currently Myers and Hackett have SROs. And I think it's important to know that the mission of the school resource officers in our schools is to foster a safe and healthy atmosphere conducive to learning. And this is accomplished through the delivery of prevention programs and engaging in community policing activities in and around school and establishing positive relationships between the youth and the police. Out in the audience, we have still two members of the Albany Police Department who have been working closely with us to redefine and realign the work that we're doing with our school resource officers this year and moving forward, and really enhancing that partnership between the school district and the Albany Police Department. The Albany International Center, grade 6 E&L teacher, to expand that program. Currently, we have one sixth grade section of at the AIC, similar to the elementary model. The class size is pretty large, and what we're looking to do is have two sections of sixth grade, but each sixth grade teacher at the AIC would specialize in team. So one sixth grade teacher would be responsible for the humanities side, so ELA and social studies, and the other sixth grade teacher would specialize in the STEM, so math and science.
Okay, on to college and career readiness. I'm very excited about this first item that we have up for you to think about, and that is the teacher assistance to provide typing, keyboarding skills for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. Computer-based testing is coming. It's not in the distant future. We are already in the process. Districts are piloting that, and it will be happening. Our students are sometimes at a disadvantage because they're very hunt and peck, and people think, you know, they can have some facility there, but they really can't be as fast as they should be in order to be competent in using the computer to participate in that. And also just actually for study in general. I like to tell people, I took a year of personal typing in high school. I type 80 words a minute, and it is an asset. This is really about keyboarding. We also are concerned and want to support computer literacy, digital literacy. Kent is committed to that as well. And we have some ideas about how that might occur in terms of with our media specialists, and does occur actually. But this is really about that skill of keyboarding. We only need a TAs to do this because we don't need someone to teach it. There are programs to do that. So we would cycle those children in, similar to the way swim works. You could cycle the kids in for a 6-week period of time, and they would get that skill set that they have and then revisit independently. The next item is an AVID teacher for Ed O'Neill. We put an FTE in both Hackett and Myers for this school year as we have grown the program up. And the same thing will happen at Ed O'Neill. So currently we started in 6th grade at Ed O'Neill. We have 2 AVID electives, and those teachers receive a stipend at this point. Next year when we roll them up into 7th grade, we'll maintain the 2 AVID electives, and then our 2 incoming 6th grades, we will implement the AVID elective, and that's how we have chosen to implement that in a yearly way at Ed O'Neill. The reason it's a little lower is we have the offset of the stipend that we're currently paying. AVID PD, both Ed O'Neill and North Albany Academy are not in the accountability system, and thus they do not get a SIG Basic grant that really allows the schools to have some money for professional development. So I am advocating that they have money that would support 8 individuals in each of those buildings to attend the Avid Summer Institute in Philadelphia that takes place every summer and is incredibly powerful. And then finally, the STEM curriculum materials we add in here. This is really about how, as Mrs. Adams said, it's about the flying classroom to some extent, but it's a bigger picture about how we're introducing STEM activities to our students.
Administrative support for instructional leadership. The assistant principals is just a continuation of our intent to try to put assistant principals in each of our buildings to support their ability to provide instructional leadership, not just in the form of visiting classrooms and providing feedback to teachers, but supporting the data teaming models that we have in place that help teachers better understand how to use their data for instruction, the monitoring, follow-up, and supervision and support that is necessary to continue to grow teacher practice on a daily basis.
And then finally, the assistant athletic director. Over the last several years, we've grown the athletic program in the school district. We've shifted to a suburban council, and that certainly has increased the level of requirements from our athletic director. The assistant athletic director is needed to support the athletic director in managing the expansive athletic program in the district of approximately 1,000 student athletes, as well as physical education for almost 10,000 students. Currently, we've added over the last couple of years 12 new teams, 6 lacrosse, 2 JV cheerleading teams, modified 9 soccer, modified volleyball, and 2 modified basketball teams at O'Neill. So we've certainly increased the number of athletic teams that we're offering and providing for our students, and with that is an increase in administrative responsibilities. Forgot I had. Sorry, I thought we were done. We have one more to go. Hall monitors. So the last one is around hall monitors, and this is really for safety and security reasons at Albany High School to provide support for late day and night supervision, peak lunch, peak times, lunch support, reflective of enrollment growth, as well as the impact of the rebuild, which will be beginning in April of 2018. The rebuild will impact numerous security challenges with each phase. It will increase, the increase is needed to monitor points of accessibility that will be created to move students and staff throughout the building during each phase. And this includes covered walkways similar to what you see in New York City, for example. And so there certainly is a need for the additional hall monitors at Albany High School.
And the final slide just gives you the option A, B, and C. Sorry, I realized that I didn't put that up at the top, but and they each reflect our best thinkings about prioritizing as we work with less funds for each option.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it, and thank you for all the work you do. And you guys are really quite a team and have made quite a difference in the academic life of our students over the last year. So thank you for your tireless work. We know that you work all the time. We'll miss you, Dr. Wilson-Turner, soon. She's going out on leave next month. It's next month. I know, but I know. So we'll start with you, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you. That was a fabulous presentation. I'm very excited about the trauma-informed professional development. It's easier to raise strong children than repair broken men. That was a Frederick Douglass quote. That would definitely help in reducing, adverse childhood experiences and, creating diversion opportunities and things, as well as I alluded to the computer keyboarding. I also took a keyboarding class, which is why I can type and really fast. So I think that's amazing. Just had a question I was going to ask Bill, but now I know it was on your part. Whether it's going to be part of a larger discussion to introduce at that stage then things like coding, other programs, other commands like in Excel and things in that nature.
That is a really great question. I know that we are seeking to do that at the high school level, but I know that that's late and we need to get it started earlier. Again, this is a part of having an elementary STEM person in place who can really explore those opportunities and help us grow it.
Especially since it's a rapid development and you acquire things, you
Yes.
can acquire new languages, and computers are a language. So, and the final thing, I have a question about the SROs. It's just a question. Are they plain clothed? And I ask that because I'm wondering if they're giving like the look and feel of policing, like a psychological makeover for communities who have like an existing relationship with them already.
So currently, they are dressed in uniform, but we have had conversation with Lieutenant Gerasi, who is here tonight, around having days where they wear street clothes and they interact on more of a personal level with students, putting on a pair of gym shorts and during lunchtime and playing basketball with the students. So we're in I'll call it a redesign of what the role of the school resource officer is.
It's definitely a thought process towards the in-group, out-group, us, them thing.
Right.
So that's why I thought about that when you were presenting. Thank you. That was it.
Dr. Chatur?
My question is about the assistant athletic director. Do other districts that have similar size programs have an assistant athletic director?
Good question. And the answer to your question is yes. They may not call it an assistant director for athletics. For example, in Schenectady, they don't have an assistant director. They have an athletic director. They have what they call an athletic faculty manager, which essentially is an administrator who can support the APPR process and do evaluations on phys ed teachers, health teachers, coaches, et cetera. Shenendehowa has a similar position. There are some districts who have supervisors of PE at the elementary level, supervisors of PE at the secondary level, as well as an athletic director. So while it may not be called an assistant athletic director, there are positions in districts that have administrative support roles supporting the athletic director.
Ms. Lang?
The elementary PD plan, do you have specific pullouts? I know that you had said that they wanted to get into richer enrichment, but are there certain demographics that are changing what the teachers need, especially with their high ENL? Are teachers asking for more ELA, more math? Is there a common thing, behavior management in the classroom?
It's about the new curriculum resources. It's about the new instructional strategies that they're trying on as a result of those resources, and really having a thorough understanding of, like, the resources that we've purchased are extraordinarily rich. They have built-in differentiated instruction. They have built-in ENL support. They have built-in, like, so many built-in, but teachers are not as familiar with those resources as they would like to be, both in ELA and math, while at the same time trying to marry the instructional strategies we've taught them over time. And so what we found is teachers are doing the best they can with what they know as they try to learn the resource, basically build a plane while they're, flying it, learn the resource while they teach. And what they need is more targeted professional development for first grade, not I'm going to a blanket PD on the New Wonders curriculum that I'm going to learn about the series. I need targeted PD about what it looks like at first grade. I need to be able to go back to my classroom, try it on, see how it works, see how it didn't work, and then come back and continue to be developed in those particular skills. Our teachers feel like we've thrown a million different things at them over the course of the change of the Common Core Learning Standards. They're still trying to get their footing through all those changes. And so we feel that if we can design a strategic professional development for them at their grade level where they work with their colleagues, in addition to the educational experts that we've put in place in terms of our coaches and reading support, that they'll have more concrete professional development that actually gets applied to their instruction.
A key piece to this is that this would be done in cohorts. So Cecily and I are speaking about either 3 buildings or 4 buildings in cohorts, so that it's a pretty small group. It's an intimate. We're thinking maybe 15 people for a couple of hours a month, maybe 2.5 hours or 3 hours at most a month. And we think that because we would have them in that very small group setting, that everyone would respond well to to that environment and learn.
Ms. Roach.
I just wanted to piggyback on that and say that's something I'm really excited about, because I've been, as part of the curriculum committee, learning about the new curriculums, and they really are, they're vast. There's a lot to them, and it's not something you can just, it's great to have, but at the end of the day, if you don't give people the time and the instruction to learn how to use them, you've just got some nice looking books, and then they get put in a closet somewhere. And anyway, my primary question, one of my questions was about the keyboarding and the teacher assistants, because that's definitely an important skill for these kids to have, especially as we move into the computer-aided testing. And I will have a type off with you any day. But my question was the need really for the teachers? I was picturing that the constraint would be more the number of computers in the computer lab, because we've already got these classroom. If it's something where it's just sit down at the computer lab and do Mavis Beacon for Kids or something, the classroom teacher could do that. I was more picturing the problem would be we don't have the machines in the labs, so I'm not sure why we would just need the teacher assistants as opposed to we have the staff because we have the classroom teachers, we just don't have enough labs to get all the kids in and out.
Well, the classroom teachers, I don't think, can be held responsible for doing that kind of instruction and typing skills. It's not the best use of their time. We are thinking about the Chromebook carts. What I had Nicole Lindemann do, who actually sort of oversees library and this aspect of things, she actually built a program review, which I could certainly send out to the board in next week's or at the week after the update, so that you could see how she is looking for this to work. But the idea is that kids would be cycling in. It's not, so your 3rd graders would go in for a half an hour a day for, maybe 3 times a week for 6 weeks or something along those lines, in order to get the skills that they needed to get more proficient. And then we would continue to work on those as we would go forward. We talked about the media specialist, we talked about the classroom teacher, but this design, we feel, would serve the students best and the buildings best.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question / comment, I guess, was about the school resource officer, because you've provided an explanation of why, for purposes of equity, O'Neill should have this. We've had discussions before as a board as to whether, my understanding is still the research on SROs in schools sometimes has different indications of what, whether that's a positive result. But I agree, for equity, it's important to have the same types of resources throughout the middle schools. I guess I'm just surprised that the city would be paying for these school resource officers in the other schools and wouldn't be paying for it in the new middle school. It would seem to be that as much as we would benefit and the students from O'Neill would benefit from having an SRO, the city too would benefit and see a reduction in costs from having that school resource officer on site to be able to do preventative work and not fixing problems later. I know that may not be realistic, but I'd like to see that the city sharing the responsibility for that position.
Ms. Smith.
I have 2 questions. One is about the hall monitors. So in Mr. Hogan's presentation, there are 3 FTEs, and then you're here in the academic plan, you're asking for an additional 2, so we would have 5 in the. Okay, and then question about the athletic director. I was trying to figure out, and maybe I don't understand exactly what an assistant athletic director would do. So I wanted to and I see the salary, but I also wanted to ask if there was another way of doing that. You know, perhaps we've got already an existing, you know, I don't want to say it's got to be the physical education teachers or not, but a stipend kind of approach versus this position particularly at the salary that's listed. So if you could help me understand more about what that individual
and I can
does.
get additional information. I don't know all of the background information, but it's my understanding that there were additional supports to the athletic department that over time were taken away from the athletic department, and therefore those job responsibilities were shifted to the athletic director. I do have that in the budget folder as part of the rationale. I just don't have all of the details readily available. I'll call it information overload right now, and not forgetfulness.
Ms. Savage.
The pre-K incremental increase, I think we have to do. It's the right thing to do, and it's necessary. I would like at some point to get a sense of what the total general fund contribution now is to pre-K, because it's really funds that should be coming from New York State, and it is an outrage, really, that we are paying this out of the general fund. This is money that if we had just started pre-K this year, all of this would be coming from the state, as I understand the way the funds work. So it's really an outrage. Apparently, I'm easily outraged today. Secondly, elementary substitutes for the math resource, and that's particular for the math resource? No, it's for both.
The substitutes is to cover the professional development. It will result in 12 days of PD to cover all of our buildings and all of our grade levels. Each teacher would be out a half day, per se. And that our idea is, because we've had such a difficult time securing substitutes in general, is that if we're able to add 9 additional district building subs who come to work every single day, we would use those building sub 12 days out of the month for professional development, and the other 12 days they'd be assigned to building to support our other substitute needs.
But the professional development, I guess I missed the answer. The professional development is around the new ELA resource, the new math resource, or both? Okay.
Both.
So I'm in support of both. The research that I've been looking at, and I'm mostly reading lay people articles, is about math PD in particular for elementary ed folk who generally don't come from a math background. I'm a math person. I love math.
You wanna do PD?
I express my love of math, and that is helpful for kids who are around me because they like math, because they think it's fun, because I think it's fun. So any emphasis that we could put on helping our elementary ed people learn math has direct research-based outcomes. So not just learning how to use the resource, but learn and love the coolness that is math. So I'm in support of it, but I'd love to see a little more emphasis on math where I think it's needed. The school resource officer, I'd like to emphasize that if the city can pay for 3 out of APD funds, I don't really understand why they wouldn't pay for 4. I'd also like to express my frustration that I'm finding out about an inequity at O'Neill now, when we were told we were offering an equitable service this year. So I am surprised, extremely surprised, to discover that there is a resource that is allocated for our other 2 middle schools that is not allocated at O'Neill. I feel that that's something I should have known earlier, and I'm frustrated about that. On theme 3, this is just I'm not sure how we're going to see these slides again, but if they come back to us, it would be helpful if the things that are in the base budget could just be noted, because I went back and forth. I had to go back and forth a bunch of times. So, for example, the STEM materials are in the base budget. That's why there's no price here. So that would have been helpful. So it would have saved me a back and forth if I'd known that. The typing, I understand the value of typing. Someday I will tell you a funny story about how I learned to type. It's probably one of the most useful skills I've ever learned. However, I'm very saddened that we would be contributing $240,000 essentially towards assessment. Really? These are 8, 9, and 10-year-olds who were basically saying they're going to computer-based assessment is coming, and that's why we think it's important that they learn to type. Now, they will learn to type eventually, but the reason we're asking them to learn so young is for computer-based assessment. And Kent's going to say no.
That is not the explicit purpose. That's a great question, and you framed it well. I think that one aspect that we haven't really gotten into is this is considered foundational work in a a larger contemplated articulation of skills. So obviously, any computer literacy and application is going to be based on foundational skills. So we're not preparing our students in any way to acquire those skills. We're expecting to engage them in higher pursuits in middle school and then ultimately in high school. So what we're trying to do now is peel away some of these foundational skills, offer them outside of the work of the classroom teacher so that the skills can then become applied and integrated into the classroom. That's pure integration of technology. Prepare the students in earlier ages to then be able to take on and apply these skills to synthesize and create knowledge and content and all that.
If that's the pedagogy behind it, let's talk about that. Let's not talk about the fact that we want our kids to score better on computer-based assessment, because that triggers a whole bunch of other concerns for me about how we're allocating our resources. If we want to teach our kids keyboarding because we want to teach them coding, that's a different conversation. So that is what you all said when you introduced that topic. You talked about computer-based assessment is coming, and that's why this is important. And if that's why we're doing it, that's not our fault that that's coming, but that's a real problem for us as a society. Anyway, in theme 4, one of the things we've talked about a couple times is trying to address the lack of clerical support, not administrative support, but clerical support, especially at the elementary school level where we have one clerk typist usually in the office. And I'm wondering, did that rise to the level of getting in the budget anywhere this year?
It didn't rise as a request from any of our building principals in their individual requests. We had maybe because we had a difficult enough time just filling the existing clerical positions that we needed in our buildings. So we do have some buildings that are single receptionist building or single clerical buildings. We have some that are clerical and then have the part-time receptionist. We have some that are actually based on size, but it didn't come through as a request for any of our building principals. What we are doing though is we are working deliberately to build the capacity of our existing clerical staff to execute their current responsibilities by providing them ongoing professional development that we started last year, because so many of them that have come on have been new to that work and kind of just been put in the position to do that work.
I thought there'd been some talk also of recategorizing the job as an office manager, which is, in my experience, more similar to what they actually do rather than clerk typist. And I thought I would see in this year's budget a small increment to make those changes. Was that idea not continued?
It was not continued, I think, again, on the basis of the number of applicants we're able to get for those positions. So when we look, I mean, I'm thinking right now of what the office manager list looks like. And it's a very small list of folks who are able to pass that test. So really what we have is the pool of clerk typists. We get a lot of people who apply for that. Qualifications and capacity vary greatly. And then we get a lot of people who apply for the administrative assistant list. But and Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, our office manager list has like 3, 4, or 5 people on it at any given point in time. And so it becomes even more difficult to fill those positions in our buildings.
So I just have a couple of comments. I understand the need for an assistant to the athletic director. My only issue with it is the assignment of $139,000 to the FTE, and I say that because I look at the instructional coaches as $82,000, and I look at other things that we assign something in the more 5-figure range to, and I'm wondering whether or not this is sort of too big a jump, and that what we're really looking at is somebody who's an assistant to rather than an assistant athletic director, an assistant to the athletic director. Which would allow us to come in at a 5-figure rate rather than $139,000, which makes it much more palatable. And so whether there's somebody in mind and for that position, and I'm smiling because I'm thinking in my head who is sort of doing that kind of work, and whether that level versus, and I know we post for these things, but that level and what that person might be making, and I don't want that to be anything that factors into why this is a number that I think is higher than it needs to be. It has nothing to do with the actual people on the ground. It has to do with looking at a budget, looking at creating a position, understanding that I actually did the research with all the suburban schools as well online, and I saw who actually has formal assistant directors and who has what is the equivalent for some of them as administrative assistants. And so if we're going beyond the administrative assistant level to make that request, then getting up to 139,000 as an FTE is, to me, way too high. I mean, there was a time not too long ago that we had people in Academy Park in administrative positions of like assistant superintendent-y type things, making that kind of money.
So this is not just salary? It
No,
also
I know, it's
includes the
ben- I know,
benefits as
I know.
well? Okay.
I know, but still 82,000 for a coach. I mean, I'm just saying, it just seems like a lot of money. So that's my issue. Second is, I know you mentioned to Vicki that you have in your folder the rationale for the no, it was something else that it's for the director or something else. But do you also have in your, no, that you didn't ask for, that you didn't ask for. But do you also have in your folder the rationale for the 3 hall monitors that are in Bill's part of the budget in slide 8? But, yeah, I think they're in slide 8. But not the ones that are here, because here you list the rationale for them, and I'm aware of this rationale. I'm aware of the need for dismissal issues. I'm aware of the need for after-hours issues. But I have to tell you, I'm not at all aware of the rationale for an additional 3 hall monitors that has not been laid out. And I just want to let you know ahead of time, I don't expect the rationale to be what happened this year, because in my 9 years in this high school, that's an aberration, and that had to do with a fire drill pull. And I've said to people, if there was not a fire drill at that point, there would have been like less than half a dozen girls fighting outside. So I don't want that just because people stood up at the auditorium in the high school and made large, big statements and speeches and yelled at our superintendent to in any way be construed as justification for what goes on at the high school.
And it's not. So I do have, it's probably a 3-page rationale for an increase in the hall monitors at Albany High School that I'm happy to share with you.
That will be great. And just so I know, did that come from the principal?
It came from the leadership and
Okay.
the security assistant director and director.
Terrific. So that would be so much easier for me to understand its placement on the slide, because as I mentioned in my comments, having it in 2 different places was just confusing to me. Like I was like, wait, is it 3? Is it 2? Oh, it's 5. So it would be really helpful when we're talking, especially about large items that are not always easy to understand, and we haven't had sort of backup of it to understand what that need is. And that's really, I think, other than that, I think everything else I pretty much understand the rationale for, because I think that's it. So thank you so much. Do we need go around again? Any other questions? Ms. Roach? No, Ms. Lang.
I just want to say that the SRO, I agree with everything that's been said. If there's equity and that's what the mayor would like, then I think that is what needs to be done. So I'm not meriting the SRO. And when I looked at the SRO definition, it was a 2-page responsibility. And I just, want to, and I want to say that I'm very glad that you said that you were talking about revamping it or making, talking about the definitions, because it is a very lengthy definition of the roles and responsibilities of what the SROs are doing in our schools, and I hope that they are adhering to all of those. So thank you.
Briefly, 2 things. First, I wanted to agree with Ms. Adler that while our athletic department may need some additional support, that I would picture it being more like a TOSA, like $82,000 for a TOSA to give additional support, and not 139. And the other thing is, I just kind of had a quick question about the rationale for the additional hall monitors to support the reconstruction effort, because my understanding on the facilities committee, talking with Turner, is that they're good at, screening off all the construction areas, making sure kids don't go in them, and that if anything, certain parts of the school would be closed off, you would have fewer doors open, fewer ways of egress. So I don't know why we would need more while the construction was ongoing.
To add on to that, also, if that were the case, if there was security needs for that, why that wasn't part of the sort of rebuild budget, rather than part of an annual budget when we're trying to make ends meet. Not that we're not on a capital project.
Well, we do know, and we're working on a presentation to share out, but we do know the traffic patterns of the students will be altered. We also know that there'll be areas where there's a barrier, like a walkway and a roof. The front of it will be open. We'll put in some extra cameras for that. But there's going to be some moving around and of student patterns, and also there'll be probably some blind spots or that weren't there before. But generally speaking, the high school has the largest staff, and when they need support in other buildings due to absences or whatever, the high school is always losing people. So they have to go cover the smaller building.
So is one of the, I mean, I'll wait till see it, but is one of the things you're saying is that we need more hall monitors at the high school because we pull them from the high school and put them other places?
Well, that is one reason. If a smaller building only has 2 hall monitors,
right,
and one doesn't come and we can't get a sub, we have situations where we have to spread some people around.
Right,
so
okay.
Because there's 22 of them at the high school, that's the largest mass to pull from.
Well, I'll wait to see the
Yeah.
rationale, so thank you. Anything else? All right, Dr. Chator.
Question. I mean, we're talking about equity, and I want to talk about equity in the curriculum. When you look across school, are all schools following the same curriculum? The reason why I ask is, for example, in the past for math, some schools have used like First in Math or software like that. Others haven't used it. And I think Toast doesn't use PowerSchool for the 6th grade students, whereas the other middle school uses PowerSchool. So, I mean, how do we make sure that the same kind of thing happening across all those?
So the adoption of the Envisions program for K-5 and the Wonders program for K-5 has really provided us with consistent curriculum across our system at the elementary level. Likewise, the curriculum maps at the secondary level have provided a level of consistency that was not there before. 6th grade is always a trick, only because we do have some housed in the elementary buildings and some in the secondary, in the middle schools. However, the 6th grade, first of all, we've reduced our 6th grades in the elementary buildings. We're dealing with 4 buildings now and not 7 as we were last year. And both the secondary instructional supervisors and the coaches are very conscientious about getting to those 6th grade teachers in the elementary buildings to ensure that they have their access to the maps, that they're following the maps, and that they're doing their work around the maps. We are beginning to look at the middle school math resource situation, and I'll have more information from that as a part of the math program
Thank you so
review.
much, Ms.
Yep.
Bechtel,
Sorry.
and thank you all. No, I mean, you know, not that curriculum's not important, but it is 11 o'clock, and we're on budget, so. Anyway, terrific, and thank you so much, and thank you. Board committee reports. Ms. Roach.
So the Wellness Committee met for the first time in several months on Friday, and we had a long and productive meeting. We talked about the recent changes that the board adopted to the Wellness Committee, and there were some mixed opinions on those changes. The Wellness Committee is kind of in the process of adapting to its new role in terms of overseeing and working on implementation and prioritizing implementation of the plan rather than formulating a new plan. But I think that there are members of the committee that are really committed to what we're doing, and there's a lot of expertise, both in terms of people from within the district staff and then also people from outside, from the public health community. And we were able to go talk through some of the issues, select some issues to prioritize, and talk about how the administration and Lori is going to kind of work with this. Talk about how we're going to assign implementation as we keep moving forward.
When you said opinions, was that because of clarity in the policy or opinions about the policy? You don't have to give me specifics, but was it the clarity of the policy or what the policy said?
We had about 20 minutes of discussion pro and anti-cupcake. It will never end. We tried to stop it. We tried to, but hopefully this was the last discussion where we said the board specifically adopted a policy that allows birthday cupcakes. The board pretty much unanimously agrees on this. We're not going to change it now. Deal with it.
Thanks for hanging tough, Ellen. Any other board committee reports? Ms. Savage.
Policy met last week. We talked about the facilities policy, which you all will recall has been a holdover since we adopted the new form for the turf field. So we're moving towards having the policy and the form be consistent with each other, which would make me so happy. We also made significant progress on the field trip policy, so I'm optimistic that not at the next board meeting, but maybe the following one, we'll have a field trip policy for you. And talked about a couple other things. You'll be pleased to know, Ellen, I know this was something you had asked about at one point, was the new policies that NYSBA had proposed to us. We have now reviewed the entire list of new policies with our council and selected a very small number that we will be continuing to consider. So it's very, very, very few. Most of them were really restatements of the law and notice policies that we didn't feel were necessary, so that was good. The other thing I'm just going to draw to your attention, because we all are on board docs more than probably anyone else, is that right now you're going to see an inconsistency in the policy area between whether the policies are in text or as an attached PDF. They will be migrating to an attached PDF over time, and you'll start seeing that, an increasing number of them being attached PDF. So I know. Sorry, Vicki. And then we meet again in a month, and we have a very chock-full agenda laid out for March and April, and we already have things on our May agenda, so we're making progress.
Any other committees? Okay, other business items? Seeing none. See, if you hadn't laughed, when Sue Detremont listens to this and Mr. John listens, they won't know there was no time in between.
May I suggest we don't adjourn, but instead adjourn to executive session?
That's what I was just going to do. I was going to say, may I entertain a motion to go into executive session, Ms., for the purpose of discussing contract and personnel. Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Roach. All in favor? That is unanimous. Have a good week off. District office, I don't even remember if they're closed every single day. They're not. You're shaking your heads. Well, just Monday. Have a nice long weekend. Thank you all.